June 15th, 2020, St. Clair Shores City Council meeting to order. Mary, please call the roll.
Mayor Walby.
Here.
Councilmember Asha.
Here.
Councilmember Kieran.
Here.
Councilmember Frederick.
Present.
Councilmember Rusi.
Present.
Councilmember Vitale.
Here.
A quorum present.
Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We do not have any proclamations or presentations at this meeting. Item 3 is audience participations. There were two methods. One is, of course, in person. You're able to speak as you always have in the past for the 2 minutes on agenda items. We also, when we put out the packet, had an email option that if you sent your public comments to the city clerk ahead of time, prior to the start of the meeting, your comment would be read at the meeting. So, Mary, under the audience participation agenda items, do we have any email ones that you'd like to read?
There are none, and no one signed up for audience participation either, Mayor.
Wow. So with that, we'll go to item 4. Request to rezone a portion of 31601 Harper Avenue from O1 office to M1 multiple family low-rise located at the corner of Harper and Share. Detroit Architectural Group. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Brian DeBartolomeo. It's a nice long Italian one for those of you. I actually represent the family that's building the building. Bo Wynn is here with me, and he is our architect from Detroit Architectural. This rezoning request is based on the fact that we would like to, in the future, add more units to the memory care center that we plan for 31601 Harper. And that's the only reason we would make that change. It allows us to double the size of the facility in the future.
So Liz, it's office now?
That's correct. The parcel is currently zoned O1 office.
And we want to rezone it to RM1.
That's correct. The parcel immediately adjacent to it is RM1.
Questions? Mr. Karen?
Yeah, Liz, just for clarity, it's all one parcel. It was just split at some point between office and multifamily residential where the church is, right?
Yes, you're correct. I misspoke. It is
Okay.
all one parcel, but a portion of it is currently zoned office and the other portion is multiple family low rise.
Okay, thank you.
Move to approve.
Support.
Moved by Mr. Frederick, supported by Ms. Rusi. Question by Mr. Vitale.
I did have some level of concern that potentially, if this isn't for the development in question and the rezoning becomes permanent, to turn that into an apartment complex would have a significantly higher amount of traffic, which I think would be tough to negotiate.
It would be, and you'd have to do a split in order to do that anyway, since it's one parcel.
I don't understand.
Well, I wouldn't do you couldn't, if we're on one parcel of land, I don't think I could build a senior or memory care center and then just stick an apartment on the side. You guys.
Well, yeah, the idea would be that maybe if the memory care venture wasn't successful, that another developer would come along, use the zoning to try to build apartments or something. And I'm not against apartments, it's just that that's an awkward curve.
It is.
And, you know, with memory care usage, not going to be a lot of traffic.
No. But with office, there would be probably just as much traffic during the day, depending on what kind of offices are there, as an apartment would.
Okay, well, the motion is out already. I might have added an amendment to it, but.
You want to add something?
Well, let me ask Mr. Erie, can we make this a condition? Can we make this conditional?
Be another motion.
No,
No.
we cannot. The condition has to be offered by the petitioner, and there has been none offered at this point. We can't, the condition cannot come from us.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Frederick.
Is it a condition if we say that if this project doesn't go through, that it reverts back? Is that conditional?
Yes, that would be conditional, but it's not appropriate. We can't come up with a condition.
Okay.
They have
Petitioner would
to.
have to offer it.
Okay.
Mr. Asha?
Yeah, I just can't see rezoning it at this time. I'm not in favor of it at all.
Back to Mr. Vitale.
I should say that I do think this would be a great use of the property. I like the project. And I think you know what my concern would be, is that potentially this becomes something else that we can't undo, and that curve is really tough there.
Mr. Erie?
I think it might be appropriate to give the petitioners an opportunity to make a conditional offer of rezoning to come back to council if they so wish.
Sure, we have no problem with, we have no problem with, as long as it's our project with it staying, on that condition.
So if,
It's your project.
That offer needs to be in writing to us, though. It cannot be made orally this evening.
We can get something to you.
We make tonight's approval conditional upon giving that to you in writing to get the approval tonight.
I didn't hear what he said.
He wants to make it condition. You get,
Approve the condition.
I know, I don't believe you can.
No, it gets a little muddy. I guess there's always a possibility that we can, approve it conditioned upon their offer of condition, but it gets a little muddy. In that sense, I would not recommend it.
And typically, we'd have not a problem. I don't think there's going to be a problem regardless of what we do. But as you know, we've been very much delayed this season. We want to get some shovels in the ground, get going. So I
Right.
think we would rescind that offer then.
Right, and as you know, we don't have another meeting for 5 weeks.
Right.
no. Well,
And quite honestly, if I might add, the existing R1 zoning, good luck building apartments on that by itself, with setbacks, with parking, with the restraints. It's not that big of a parcel to even put 1, 2 level, even a single level. I don't know if you'd be able to meet the parking requirements with the setbacks and all the constraints, let alone 2 levels that would require more parking.
I think that makes
It's
it,
almost an existing non-compliant piece
Yeah.
that we just want to pull in.
kind of agree with you. Mr. Vitale, before I call Mr. Karen? Mr. Karen?
Just more on the traffic that comes off of Share Street, that is one of the more unique streets, as there's only a few outlets out of an entire neighborhood that's back there.
That's it.
And that increases a lot of the traffic, not necessarily, the use of this property was office, multifamily, residential. It's not going to be an appreciable difference compared to just the amount of residential traffic going in and out. I know several residents were very concerned at planning about the traffic there, but I don't think whatever goes there is going to be any significant impact compared to that residential traffic that comes out of there. Because that's a large subdivision with
It is.
only a few outlets. And it's the only outlet directly onto Harper.
True.
As well, so. The other ones going out to 13 Mile or going out to Masonic there, right?
So we have a motion to rezone 31601 Harper Avenue from O1 to RM. One moved by Mr. Frederick, supported by Ms. Rusi. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
No.
5-1, it passes. Thank you. Item 5 is the request for the site plan approval for the extended stay senior living facility at 31601 Harper Avenue.
Sure. it should be in the minutes or not.
Again, there shows our, oh gosh, I'm still getting used to the mask.
It's okay.
This area that he's showing shows the existing outline of the property, and that the outline of what we will be using once we build the project or complete the project. You can see the future site and where that rezoned section was. And it barely fits the building that we're putting on that side there, so.
So it's an existing church, as you know, that we're trying.
Right.
I know it's messy. Existing church, as you know, that we are going to be making some modifications to repurpose. It's been vacant for some time, repurpose this into a memory care. I know that at the last meeting, there was some concerns that perhaps the rooms were a little bit on the small. We were still going through programming at this point, still talking and coordinating with state regulations. Before we had smaller rooms, we had some gang showers and some shared facilities. But we're looking at a newer plan. I didn't want to confuse anybody by bringing it, but everybody's going to have their own shower and a larger kitchen. So they decreased the number of rooms. The numbers still work, and give everybody just a little bit more room in those rooms and have their own toilet facilities. So that's what's coming down the road. The existing parking lot, I believe, this is going to be milled. It's in pretty good shape in the base, and most of it's going to be milled and taken down. We are going to be adding some nautical light posts at both drives to go with the city theme that was asked. I believe last meeting, we were asked to modify the dumpster to make it match the brick. I think we had split-face block. We've made those adjustments, and I believe we had a conditional approval on that to make it brick to match the building. Along with, what was the other condition? Liz, you remember? Oh, to have a window into the courtyard, correct. I believe that was it. Other than that, it's a great program. I believe the memory care facility is going to be a very low impact use. People are going to be there for the most part with, I would say, unfortunately, low visitors, because it is unfortunate that the elder people don't get a lot of visitors off the time, especially with people with medical care. It's a very difficult thing. I wish they had a little more frequency, but in this case, it probably won't be a high impact area.
Questions? Mr. Asha?
Yes, thank you. I mean, I hate critiquing architects. I've never won in 50 years, but the exterior doesn't look like you're doing much to it. It just looks like a church. It looks like an elementary school. I mean, there's no, it's all brick, which I appreciate it, but, you know, there's no stone. It's just, there's not much there.
Yeah, well.
And the front doesn't face Harper either. It faces north, doesn't it?
The entrance faces into the parking lot. That's how they're, because the parking lot's back there, just the way the church was set up in the first place.
Just doesn't look like much going on with it.
Well, we want to because we're not going to be able to match the brick on every section when we're doing repairs and that, and a little bit of an addition, we do plan on changing the color, you know, something. My feeling is something more with a lake feel. I see the red that we have there, I got rid of that right away. That's going to be blue. I want to change the look of the outside as much as we can without changing that building, which it seemed to be what the neighbors wanted us to save as much as we could. And
to me, it looks like it needs more. It needs more stone or something.
What we did do is, you know, if the brick is in very good sound shape, rather than tear it down and put stone and some other materials, if we're painting the brick, we're also adding up to 4 feet of roof screening around the whole building, because we're going to have some rooftop units up there. We want to screen that. Also, it's a typical 14-ish foot kind of a squat building, and it doesn't have a whole lot of presence. So adding a little bit of metal panel on the top with the crown molding will give it a little bit better presence. Replacing all the glazing We actually are repurposing some of the stained glass on some of the old sanctuary part. On the lower left, you can see, just under that eave of that overhang, there's stained glass. And we've actually went through a little bit more of expense to bring the ceilings up and create vaults, banks of ceiling so that that light will come through. That actually goes into the hallway on one side and into the patient's rooms, or the patrons' rooms on the other side. So we want to kind of keep some of those cozy feels.
Well, at the same time, we're adding a ton of windows to it too, which will give a
Right.
big change. Every room has to have an operable window. So that'll be a major change in just the exterior of the building too. I know the side that faces Harper, it's a little harder to do, but like I said, with the color and the, you know.
And to your point, the entry's always been on the other side. I mean, if I designed it from the get, I would probably still put the entry on the other side, because from Harper, I'd rather see grass in a building rather than a bunch of cars parked in front of a building. It's totally my opinion, but.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Vitale.
Well, I'll start by saying, separate from your project, it is always sad to me to see that we're repurposing churches into other things, but of course, that's nothing to do. And I think your use for this is an appropriate use for, sacred ground. And I will say I voted for your rezoning largely on what I believe will be the strength. I think you guys will succeed. I expect that you will. In terms of the architecture on the building, actually, I don't have really much problem with it. I would probably encourage you to paint as little brick as possible so that it doesn't become a maintenance issue. Maybe for the blank wall that faces Harper, maybe and this is just a suggestion, maybe some kind of metal sculpture with a sailboat or something like that might break up some of that barn wall look at the front. But that's just a suggestion. It's not any condition or anything like that.
It might also be something that I'll do with the pedestal sign, changing the pedestal sign so that it's more of a breakup of the front.
I think this is a good project, a good use for the property. I think it'll bring a little bit of life to the north end of the city with, even just your employees and stuff going to shops and things near there. So I'm going to vote yes on it, and I wish you guys all the luck.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Ms. Rusi.
Thank you. Just I'll echo what Councilman Vitale said. In terms of the architecture, it meets the ordinances for where it doesn't. It's going to the ZBA for another body to grant the variances there. As to the design, it's not my money, so it doesn't really matter, does it? As long as it meets the ordinances, you're the ones making the investment in the city. You're the ones putting your money on the line to bring a business to St. Clair Shores. And you're designing a building that meets your standards and the standards that you want to bring for the building you're paying for. So I guess my personal aesthetic concerns really don't matter, neither do anyone else's up here.
And this is something we like to do, is repurpose a building, because it doesn't make sense to take that history out if you can save it at all.
No, especially given its former use was a church,
Right.
and I think there's people in the area who definitely appreciate your preserving the building and using it for, just like Councilman Vitale said, a good purpose. I mean, this is going to serve a lot of patients who are very vulnerable and need facilities like this. So I'll say, and it's been long vacant too. I do have an Adopt a Road through the county program in Harper. This church is on it. And this facility, this parcel has been not always the best kept up.
Right.
After it's been vacant, where we've been picking up a lot of trash from it because it's been vacant for so long. So it's nice to see some life come back to a long vacant property. So thank you for choosing St. Clair Shores and for coming to St. Clair Shores and investing in St. Clair Shores and taking this parcel and respecting its former use and bringing it up to new standards for a new good use.
Thank you.
Mr. Frederick?
Thanks, Mayor. Couple things. I know they've got a gate in the middle of the parking lot so people don't cut through, probably because of the traffic. I'm sure that's going, but I guess my point is can we monitor that to make sure that we're not having people cutting through that parking lot with, memory care people maybe out in a wheelchair or whatever? I mean, this would be a concern if in fact the traffic did get built up on
Well, the
Sheriff.
guests won't be outside the, other than the closed courtyards, it'll just, but we
Okay.
will keep track of people in, maybe with
Yeah.
a speed bump or something to kind of keep.
Maybe it's, no cut-throughs or something, like whatever, I know
Yeah.
there's signs there now, but,
There's signs there now, and we'll update those and make those,
okay.
look modern.
All right, and then you, on the north end of the property, you've got some, sort of overgrown trees over there. What's your plan for the,
We're gonna have a whole new landscaping done there too.
everything's coming down
Everything's
this there?
coming down, except for the, up at the corner and that where there's some mature trees. We love those, but we're gonna,
Right.
but
You're
the
gonna-
stuff around the building, we'll start clearing
All right.
out and doing a whole new plan.
and you'll trim those up, and obviously the trees that are on the, near the share side of the proposed new area, those will have to come down, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So just promise me that you're gonna treat those trees at the north end with some TLC?
Oh, yeah.
All
No,
right,
no.
and trim them up, make them look real good, because right now they're looking kind of marginal.
Right, and since it's a family project, again, I don't need my father and mother killing me over if I made it ugly for any reason whatsoever. So we will, I'll make sure that the landscaping looks good.
All right.
I've been cutting the grass recently, so.
Well, and maybe in the new proposed addition, you can get a little more creative with the architecture over there too, so. All right, I'm good, thanks.
Mr. Karen?
Thank you. Yeah, actually, just no questions regarding the design or anything. It'll definitely be an improvement there. Thank you for bringing up that it referred to as a memory care facility versus we weren't sure what extended stay meant in terms of, assisted living facilities that are
Right.
out
There
there.
was no good pigeonhole, I think, to name it when we were first coming, but it is a memory care.
Okay.
You can tell them the new name, though.
Well, it'll be Hidden Harbors Memory Care is the name of the
Okay.
project.
That's the sign that's out front too, right? Right now.
It will be.
Will-
There's nothing right now.
I mean, it says memory care or something.
It says memory care available.
Yeah, it's had that on there for
We've
a
been
long
getting,
time
and that was
now.
when we originally were going to sell it as a done project, but now I'm keeping it for myself, so.
Okay. So yes, I'm a little more concerned, again, has nothing to do with site plan. My vote's not contingent on that. I'll be voting for the project, because it does comply with everything we'd be looking for. But more concerned of the business viability of it. You're saying it'll be family-owned. There's a lot of liability involved. Most of these are, rather individual properties. They're typically handled by a corporation just because of all the liability, training, staffing,
And this is
everything that
where-
goes into that. And I speak from personal experience of my father being in memory care for 4 years prior to him passing away last year. So,
And this
so
is
I
something
look
that
at
we've
that
been
level
doing.
of service that he received, and I'm just trying to grasp how you're going to do this in a probably now less than a 20-bed facility,
It's, what was it,
18.
18-bed
Currently ready,
facility
And
with
at
no
18
other medical affiliation.
No, but we've been working with other groups to make sure we have, I'm putting the plans together on the daily operations of the property. It is owned by a corporation, but it, but I come from the business side too. I was real estate for a long time, property management for a long time, so I understand that to make sure that all those rules are upheld, to make sure that we're giving the best service. I'm not going to skimp on that.
Okay.
And
And-
that's why 18 beds, when I told him I would hurt him if there was less than 18, because that's where I need to
Okay.
be.
And you guys are fully working with the state, understanding, comply with state regulations, since they regulate the interior, we
Right.
don't.
And
We're
we've
only-
had
We only regulate
discussions.
the exterior side of it, the interior codes and everything.
I've
they'll
had
be
discussions
following
with
up on.
people I can get on the phone with, because there's a lot of people in the state weren't working either. So this kind of been that weird project that we had hoped to have open by summer. Now we're hoping by fall, but we're working with the state to get all our
There's a lot
licensing
of
taken care
guidelines
of.
online. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Motion to be in order?
Move to approve.
Support.
Moved by Mr. Karen, supported by Mr. Frederick, to approve the site plan approval at 3601 Harper Avenue based on the following conditions that are cited here. I don't need to read them to you. You're agreeing to these conditions adhere and your tenants at ZBA. Again, moved by Mr. Karen, supported by Mr. Frederick. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
5-1, it passes. Thank you. So do you have an exact timing? So, you're...
We would like to get started on this building, in about middle of July, and then we would have, by the end of October, we would be able to accept patience there. So.
Good luck.
Yeah, good luck and thank you for coming.
Thanks.
Thanks, Larry. Appreciate it.
Item 6, request for the adoption of a resolution to place a charter amendment to section 10.046, the state general election, November 3rd, 2020. Mr. Erie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to make two comments regarding what's before council. Essentially, this is a charter amendment that is intended to institutionalize what now is a policy of having a 2-minute period of comment prior to council voting on any matter, and also to, of course, have a second audience participation near the conclusion of the meeting in compliance with the requirements of the Michigan Open Meetings Act. Two issues have come up. I'd like to share them with the City Council. One was brought to my attention today by Mr. Koppler. I think he made a good point, and that is that we don't want anybody to misunderstanding that the entire period of, the first period of audience participation is 2 minutes in length total. So I would, if council approves this, make a change that would read on each of the 3 paragraphs, a comment of at least 2 minutes per person at regularly scheduled continuing on. So there would be no misunderstanding that it's a total period of 2 minutes. Secondly, Councilman Karen communicated with me last week and wanted to make sure that there was no confusion that this language created a situation where there would be a period of audience participation immediately prior to each issue that council is going to vote on. And I had shared with Mr. Karen that that certainly is an excellent point. I debated when I put the language together about that particular issue, hence the language that indicates that there shall be set aside a period of public comment of at least 2 minutes per person prior to city council voting on matters requiring a vote at such meeting, et cetera, et cetera. What this language does is gives the future city council, should they wish, as some city councils do, to actually have a period of public comment immediately preceding each vote that council is going to take that night. It would give the council the ability to do that without having to go back to a charter amendment to do so. And if our decision, current council's decision, is to have one period of audience participation where each person is going to speak up to 2 minutes prior to a vote of city council, this language is general enough to allow city council to have that kind of a procedure, because it certainly would be, as the language says, prior to city council voting on something. So we could leave it a little bit more general like this, or if, as Mr. Karen suggested, I could work on the language to make it clearer that there is one period of not council comments, one period of audience participation only prior to the council vote and not prior to each vote that council takes.
Okay. I'll open it to questions, but I'll start with Mr. Vitale, who brought this issue to I think this whole body.
Thank you, Mayor. This is an idea that I will be honest with you, have had kind of chambered for some time, and that would, to ensconce the way that we do business now, because I think that that's been valuable to the city. I think the informed residents of this city raise a lot of good points. They deserve to be heard before we vote, and I really, truly have no doubts that this council would continue that. However, would be at the pleasure of any future council if that were to continue. So the idea was to really harden this, to codify it into our charter, which is our constitution, so that, subsequent councils will also have to hear from the residents before they vote. And I guess a little bit of it was the passing of Councilman Rubino, who was a reformer, and it kind of got me thinking about how council has changed over the years and could very well change some more in the future. And probably the other part of it is essentially what happened with COVID and Zoom meetings and things like that, and I was very concerned. Again, I think the city is as good as it is because the residents pay attention. So that kind of got me thinking about this, and I thought, I really want to give people something to vote on in November, or, presidential, federal election, an important election. I want to give them something to vote on that, is a check on government, that is a transparency for government. I actually had a few other ideas, but those will have to wait because this is probably the least controversial. So that said, I'm glad we've got this. I hope we can get it on the ballot in November, and I'll do my best to try to explain people that it is definitely in your interest to vote for this charter amendment.
Thank you. Ms. Rusi.
Thank you. Just a couple, points on the language itself. I agree with the point City Manager Koppler had brought up about how it's currently written. It sounds like the period would be capped at 2 minutes total, which we couldn't do, we wouldn't want to do, and we don't currently do. We want it to be a maximum of 2 minutes allotted to each person who chooses to speak. So I agree with making that change, and maybe instead of saying even per person, per member of the public or something who wishes to afford themselves the opportunity. And as to the second one, this, like Councilman Vitale was saying, the whole point of this is to enshrine in our charter. The current was just a policy, and we all know policies can be changed at the whim of council for votes and the policy changes. So a charter can only be changed by the vote of people, which is why we want to enshrine this in the charter so future councils can't change that. When the goal of this amendment is to enshrine what's currently taking place, I think we want to set the minimums and protect the current policy. In terms of it providing flexibility for future councils to exceed that, future councils can always exceed that via policy, just like we lived under a policy for over 10 years of providing the 2 minutes allotted per person to have the opportunity to address council regular council meetings. So I think I'd like that language tweaked, because right now it certainly does sound like we're going to be allotting this time period per each agenda item, where it says this is a charter amendment to require, not to allow, but to require a period of public comment of at least 2 minutes, which again, we want to say per person, per member of the public, who chooses, to take the opportunity of regularly scheduled council meetings prior to city council voting on matters requiring a vote at such meeting. So the way it says, we would be required to we would be required to have this opportunity prior to us voting on matters, prior to the vote being taken. So I think we definitely want to change the language for it to actually do what we had intended to do, which is to enshrine the current policy of having that 2 minute audience participation portion opportunity at the beginning of the meeting. So the language I had drafted previously and sent something along the lines of a period of public comment shall be provided at the beginning of each city council meeting to allow members of the public the opportunity to address city council regarding items appearing on the agenda requiring a vote at that meeting. Each interested member of the public shall be provided a minimum of 2 minutes to speak during the public comment period. Then a second period for public comment shall be provided at the conclusion, or we could put near the conclusion, give it's not at the very end of the meeting. Mayor's comments come at the very end. Near the conclusion of each city council meeting pursuant to the Michigan Open Meetings Act, which is what we act according to. So something like that, maybe, to make it more apparent to the future councils that will be abiding by this, and to the members of the public who will be asked to consider and vote on this, what we're actually doing here. And what we're actually doing here is we are trying to protect that 2 minutes at the beginning of that we allot everybody who comes to the council meeting. If they want to address us for up to 2 minutes on items appearing on the agenda for a vote, they will have that opportunity. They don't have to take it, obviously, but they will be allowed that opportunity to do so if they so choose. So I would like to see the language tweaked a little bit, a bit, on those two issues to make it more in accordance for what we're looking for a vote on and looking to put in the charter. And I guess, I'd raise a couple of these issues to Matt. I know John raised a couple of these issues to Bob, and it's a little bit disappointing we don't have the actual updated language reflecting this in front of us, given the next meeting's not till July 20th. We're on a deadline with the state to get this to the state to get this approved to be put on the agenda for November. Do we even have the opportunity for this to come back in a redrafted form on July 20th for us to vote on, to get up to Lansing, to secure their approval for it to be on the ballot in November, or do we have to make the decision at tonight's meeting?
Mary?
So good language ready to go for ballot production has to be certified to the clerk and approved by council by August 11th. And charter amendments need review by the Attorney General and the governor.
Okay, so we would have time if we want to actually have the actual language we want to appear in the charter and to on the ballot to actually vote on that and not just our conceptualized ideas at the table, if we so choose.
Yeah, it gives us, right, 3 weeks. If we approved it July 20th, is what you're saying, and
It's tight.
it's three weeks. In your past experience, Mary and Bob, does that work? Huh?
Yeah, because I would feel a lot more.
60 days.
Pardon me?
I think the Attorney General needs to have this for 60 days. Is that correct?
Right.
Yes.
They have 60 days to act on it, and if they don't act on it within 60 days, I imagine we're good.
If they don't act on it within 60 days, we still are permitted by law to put it on the ballot.
Okay, so timing still works, if we wait till July 20th.
It would be close, and we would lose a month potentially of being able to, I guess we could still publicize this, but to let people know that this will be on the ballot in November, you know what I mean, in terms of public notice and everything. I just feel a little bit uncomfortable voting for something tonight when we don't have the actual language we're voting on in front of us.
Mr. Erie?
This was ultimately my decision that I texted to John that perhaps we could, rather than try to work out that language, we could discuss it tonight, and I will take responsibility for that. I would respectfully suggest that the language as it reads does cover what we want to cover. When we indicate that the period of public comment occurs prior to the council voting on matters requiring a vote, prior to can be any time prior to the vote. If I were to draft language that would specify that the public comment period would be before each vote, then I would have used language that said that period of public comment of at least 2 minutes at regularly scheduled council meetings immediately prior to city council voting on the matter. I intentionally did not use the word immediately prior and used more general language, just requiring that the public comment period rather be prior to the vote. And we are, by that language, institutionalizing the fact that there will be a period prior to the vote that will be as ensconced in the charter, but it gives liberty to a future council to, by policy, still make it either one period of public comment prior to the vote like we do now, or should they choose to have a period of public comment immediately preceding each vote. Both would be prior to the council voting. I think that this language covers it. However, if there is language that council feels would be more appropriate, I would probably recommend that we work it out tonight, but if we don't, we still have time to bring it back in July.
Ms. Rusi?
I think in terms of what prior to and what this is doing is at best open to interpretation, as we've proven tonight. I would like to see some clearer language as to what we're actually looking to put in the charter, which is the current policy. And again, any future councils can always adopt a new policy that sets more time or puts more time opportunities to people. This is just trying to protect the minimum here. So when other councils always have the option to do more like we have done. It wasn't in the charter for this 2-minute period to happen for the over 10 years we've been having it happen and per policy. So other councils can be free to do the same if they want to exceed that. I just would like to see, I think, some language that's a little bit less open to interpretation about the policy we're trying to protect.
May I make a recommendation that we pass this item right now and come back to it a little bit later in the meeting? And in the meantime, I will work on some proposed language.
Let's start the questions first, and then we'll address that, okay? Let me start with Mr. Frederick.
Thanks, Mayor.
Come back to Chris.
I have no problem with the language as it reads, because it will, if it's passed, it will codify the 2 minutes at the beginning of the meeting, which is really what we're trying to do. And the fact that if another council wants to let people talk more, to me, that's even more transparent. So I would have no problem with that either. I mean, currently, under policy, we basically tell them you have to sign in with Mary. That's not in here either, right? So as a council, we're basically saying, here are the rules, basically, to participate in this 2 minute. And if the rules are that you get to speak before every single issue, which I'd be surprised if a council would do that, but they could. Mm-hmm. Not to mention is we could suspend those rules and talk before a particular issue or take public comment under this, I believe, if with advance notice. And who knows, if there's a crazy issue that we really need a lot of people to talk about, or get both sides where the place is full, all 12 of them. I'm looking at 12 chairs out here, that's why I'm saying that, versus the 35 or 40 that used to be here. That would be something that the council or the mayor, could determine even prior to the meeting. So I have no problem with this language at all. I think this language does exactly what we're trying to do. And just to hold it to the beginning of the meeting doesn't necessarily, open up the whole transparency issue for a later council. So I'm fine with it.
Mr. Karen?
Thank you. Yeah, I would agree with Bob on adding the per person after each of the areas where you have at least 2 minutes.
With that change per person,
Right, yeah.
absolutely.
But in terms of, my question, Bob, I was more worried about someone coming in and challenging us later. Oh, no, this meant you had to do it prior to each vote. So I guess, Bob, if somebody wanted to make that challenge with the legal logic you just gave for why it would still leave it open to council, to leave it at the beginning of 2 minutes, or if a future council wanted to go to each agenda item, what would be their methodology for challenging it?
I don't think they'd have any methodology. The charter says this. Here's what it simply says. Hey, before we vote on something, you get to have a public comment on it. And we have given you the public comment before we voted on it.
For any citizen wanting to challenge us that we weren't following something that's already in the charter, give me an idea of what is the legal route? Because I'm thinking of, is anyone ever really going to go to that extent? What would they legally have to go down to prove that my point's not really valid and what I'm concerned about?
If they had a different interpretation, what would happen is they would need to file what's called an action for declaratory relief, asking the Macomb County Circuit Court to look at our charter language and agree with them that this language says that they get to vote, they get to speak before each agenda item. In my opinion, no court's going to determine that because it doesn't say that.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Asher, then Mr. Vitale.
I'm fine with the language the way it is. Mr. Erie wrote it. He thinks it's fine. He's the attorney. We have to trust in his judgment. So I believe it's fine.
Mr. Vitale.
I'll let you.
It's like getting paid to go to lawyer in school.
No, this is like not being paid to go to lawyer in school.
Well, I guess, yeah, you can look at it that way, too. First of all, I don't think there's really any debate on the second half of this where, a second period shall be set aside for open meetings.
Yeah.
So I won't belabor the point with that. And I have to say that adding the per person, I really don't see how you get around it. It's very simple. At each regularly scheduled city council meeting, there shall be set aside a period of public comment for at least 2 minutes per person prior to city council voting on matters requiring a vote. With the addition of per person, that kind of settles the idea that we're not going to just try to cut the whole thing down to 2 minutes, which would be kind of ridiculous, especially if we had a number of people that wanted to comment. And with the use of, I saw John's point with the idea which would say set aside 1 period of public comment, but I also see Mr. Erie's point to leave it somewhat vague of A, which then would allow future council to expand it if they wish to. So I really don't see an issue with, after adding per person, I think this works. And it's simple. There are going to be a lot of things to vote on in November. I don't want this to be too long to read. So
Make the motion.
I'll make the motion to add this, or to submit this language to the State Attorney General with the intent of putting it on the November federal election ballot.
I would support you.
With the provision that we add per person after 2 minutes.
And I will support you.
Thank you, Pete.
Other questions regarding that? And this is we'll call it a supermajority vote, and I'm not sure, I don't think it said it, so this does require the 5 votes in order to pass, so.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
This is to Councilperson Rusi. Do you think that it would clarify if it indicated that at each regularly scheduled city council meeting, there shall be set aside instead of 1 period of public comment of at least 2 minutes per person? Instead of the word So that
I think there's still the unclarity with the prior to city council voting on matters section. I don't think that really clarifies it.
Okay.
There's a motion on the table.
Yep, there is one by Mr. Vitale, supported by Mr. Asha, with a one change, adding the per person. Again, as I said, it takes 5 votes. So we'll do a roll call vote. Motion was made by Mr. Vitale, supported by Mr. Asha.
Councilmember Vitale,
Aye.
Councilmember Asha,
Aye.
Councilmember Karen,
Aye.
Councilmember Frederick,
Aye.
Councilmember Rusi,
No.
Mayor Walby.
Aye. 5-1, it does pass. Thank you. Bob, you get back to us when it's approved? Yes. Or Mary? Thank you. Item 7, third quarter council report and budget amendments. Laura Stowell, the Finance Director and Treasurer.
Good evening.
Evening.
For you is the council report and just the overview of where we were at 3/31. Seems like a lot's happened since then, but couldn't give you June because we're not there yet. So we are over our, normally it's about 75% that we should be at for our revenues and expenses. We're at 80% overall for our revenues and 63%. However, I believe Mr. Karen brought it up that some of these are seasonal. We don't have the exact same 12 months, so it's kind of hard sometimes. We might see a lot of capital come in June, May and June, so. But for this report, we are on budget at that point. I don't know if there's any questions on that part, if you'd like me to go through our budget amendments.
Yeah, once you go through it, Laura, and then they can bring it all back.
Okay, all right.
Questions will be on all of it, okay?
Okay. Budget amendments, there are not a lot, but these are, the only budget amendments that we have done so far this year are for the carryovers, so this encompasses other things other than those that were already approved in a council meeting. So I have added the MIDC grant. We needed to move some of those items. We originally had budgeted in Fund 210, general fund, but it should go into the MIDC fund. So some of this is just moving things where they shouldn't be. The COVID, I am just putting in what we have spent so far in our, or what we think we might spend, because that was an emergency spending, but I wanted to get it into the amended budget. The drug court in the court was not originally, we didn't have anything budgeted in there, and so we did need to put those in there because we have gotten expenses. It is only the second year that we've started collecting that, so it's the first year that we had expenses in there. In finance, we did include some, or incur some additional expenses, or plan to, for the new budgeting system, the way that we are budgeting this year. So there is 10,000 between some training from Munis as well as some reporting options there. Sidewalk revenue, we hadn't budgeted because it wasn't the year for that. However, we did a lot of the revenue from prior years caught up with this, and so I did want to put that in there to budget for that. And then the last one under general fund is, I had made a carryover for insurance. However, Doug had already budgeted that year. Normally it's done through a carryover, so I needed to take out the carryover because he had already put that in the budget and I didn't catch that. Utility fund, probably the bigger, the main part of this is really because we are not receiving any revenue for the storm drain. We are taking that revenue out as well as reducing some of those expenses. Some we obviously still need to provide maintenance on our storm drains, but this is to recognize that we are not getting revenue on that and to lower those expenses where we can. And then for the wages especially, we're putting those wages into the sewer expenses because that's where the employees are working instead of it going into the storm drains. Budget 20, or Amendment 2004 is for the all of the wages that were incurred with the 2% that went into effect on July 1st. Those were not completed or voted on by the budget last year, so we needed to adjust all of those. So that takes up a couple pages there. You also have with you budget to actual reports, which kind of support what is in the first pages for the general fund. The committee balances are there, and then there is the investment report that just shows where we are with our cash at this point. And then really the last, graph kind of shows where we're at with our cash there. And we're looking fairly, I mean, we're kind of going along as we normally are. So right now, that may look a little different when I present June, but that's where we are now.
Questions? Mr. Karen?
Thank you. Yeah, in terms of the insurance change, totally good with blaming Doug and that, so totally good with that.
Well, I should have caught that it was already there and not
Well, he should have
doubled it.
told you he left it there before he left, you know? Instead of us having to find this stuff that he moved around afterward.
I can't remember.
On the storm sewer high water emergency, 250,000. I know we did the PO for this year for 30,000 for emergency sandbagging. What other type of expenses are going into that 250,000?
Well, some of that was also for pumps that we purchased in this fiscal year.
Okay, earlier in the year, okay.
So it's anything from July, really, that we've
Okay.
done on that. So it includes some pumps that we bought.
Some signs?
Of course, signs, barricades that we've done. So all of those expenses, I just wanted to get them on our budget, even though they're considered emergency, because they are going to affect what our budget looks like, so.
Right, okay. No, that's a good catch to have in there. And just last thing, in terms of, one of the nice things about the graphs you have here at the end, when you look at the general fund, where we are at this point is higher from a fund balance than we were at the same time last year. And it's very easy to be able to tell that
Yes.
from a graph like this, so.
Well, and actually, that is really nice, because, you always worry about our general fund cash, so that's nice to
Right.
see.
And it's also, and you just kind of see what the spending pattern is. We do get an influx of money from property taxes between July and September, and it gets spent down over the next 9 months after that.
Right.
But it does show we're in a healthy position, since we don't know what state revenue sharing is going to be based on sales tax revenue projections, and that we're in a good position going into the next fiscal year, when those revenues are a little more uncertain still, so.
Correct.
Good. Thank you.
Motion be in order.
Move to approve the budget amendments and receive and file the financial report.
Support.
Moved by Mr. Karen, supported by Mr. Frederick. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Laura, thank you. Bids, contracts, purchase orders. Item 8A is a request to approve the DPW tire purchasing contract and blanket purchase orders. Bids open 5/26. Mr. Babcock, Director of DPW.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Evening.
Tonight, we have a number of blanket purchase orders on the agenda. Luckily, 13 of them are multi-year contracts, so we have it under the consent agenda for most of them. However, this one is for the purchase of tires, and it's something that we need to bid out each year, so, because of the fluctuation in pricing with the tires. But we did put that out for bids, and we were able to get 4 responses with some good competitive numbers, and ask for your approval.
So you want to go to Leslie Tire?
Yes, yeah, they're a local vendor that, they're already the local vendor for many of the large tractor tires that we use. But we would prefer to use them rather than the low bidder, which is in Ohio.
Questions? Mr. Asha?
Yeah, that was my question, Smiley Tire was a little lower, but you're more comfortable with Leslie, so that's great, thank you.
Ms. Rusi?
If geographical distance can be an issue that would impair your ability to recommend them, even if they are the lowest bidder, next year in the RFP, can we put bidder must be within a certain number of miles or something from St. Clair Shores, just so they don't waste their time? If we don't put that type of restriction in, because they submit a proposal, they actually are the lowest bidder, but because they're located in Ohio and it would take a while for the tire, for things to come here, could we put some sort of restriction in there just to give them a heads up? And other bidders, like, potential bidders such as themselves, before they exert all this effort to not get the bid?
Sure. What do you think would be like a reasonable radius?
What would you think would be the reasonable radius? I think you're a little bit more equipped to answer that question.
I mean, would like 20 miles be?
You know the operations of your department and how long it would take for this type of thing. I'm just suggesting to prevent a company in Ohio and this location from going through the effort to put a bid in just to be told, oh, you're in Ohio.
Okay.
I'm just,
Okay.
something
Yeah, I'll
like
come
that, I
up with
think
some
would be
kinda-
a little bit more fair to potential bidders, to give them an idea of what we're looking for versus what we won't consider, even if you are the lowest bidder.
Okay.
Thank you.
Move to approve.
Support. Moved by Mr. Frederick, supported by Mr. Asha, to award it to Leslie Tire Service. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Thank you.
Brian.
8B is request to award to Midwest Carpet and Restoration for the renovation of the tax foreclosure property at 22925 Maxine. Mr. Reyes, Director of Community Development.
Brian.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'll take care of this. You got it set up. We do have some slides that we'll show first.
While he's doing that, Brian, there was an envelope for you over there. It's been in quarantine for 3 weeks, so no worries.
still got a few bugs with COVID. So the first house tonight is, this is one of the 2 tax foreclosure homes from last July on Maxine. It's close to what it looks like. It's been cleaned out. Very tired, but structurally sound, except for the bathroom.
Yeah, tape.
Did it have that much duct tape on it when we saw it?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I remember that much.
Well, that wallpaper would have distracted you from the duct tape.
Yeah, there's a lot of glare on it. It was mirror finish.
Wow, look at the basement floor. That's definitely
I think
50s.
that's, yeah, that's the last one for this. So we put it out to bid. We had 11 people at the mandatory walkthrough, 11 bidders. 4 bids were submitted. The low bid being $68,500, the high bid being $139,405, which is an outlier of the bidders. As you can see, they're gonna re-side the house, a new roof on the house, new kitchen in the house, new bathroom in the house, paint the house, and clean up the basement for $68,000. We have not worked with this bidder before. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the wrong one here.
Yeah.
Sorry, set the wrong one aside. So this is Maxine. So the price on this one is $74,166.
Yeah.
The high bid was $166,860, which was an outlier on this one. We could tear the house down and build a new one with change for $166,000. So this would be a total makeover up and down to the house. Everything is pretty much worn out in the house. This bidder is the one that is new to us. I did check his references. Overall, good references. You know, they weren't fabulous, but none of them had a problem with them. Typical contractor issues. So we are recommending the council awarding this to Midwest Property Restoration in the amount of $74,166.
And then we acquired it for about $5,900 and we got $2,300 into it, so all in all, after this is done, you got about $82,000, right?
Correct. And this house, it doesn't look like it, and even when Councilman's Ashen Vitale, this is the exact house we renovated a few years back on Maxine, except it's a wider lot and it's turned 90 degrees. The door is on the skinny side, not the broad side. But it's exact layout, exact house that we sold for $105,000. We had a bidding war on that one when we sold it. This one has a 2-car garage. The other house had a 1-car garage. So there is value. We know there's value in the house of at least that much.
Sure.
But we're using that as just reference.
Okay. Ms. Rusi?
Thank you. You said that we haven't worked with them before, but you checked the references. What type of work did they do for the entities that they listed as references? Was it similar work to this, or was it?
They had, the one thing I want to know is in contract size, was it a $5,000 job? They did a total office renovation that was around $100,000. They'd done some church work for another, a large foyer area that was more of a significant size. Those kind of projects. Like I said, they, you know, like anything, one says just always watch for extras, but that's true with every contractor. And I think the operator of that facility, a church facility, was less sophisticated. The other person who did the office project had a little higher rating for him, probably just knew how to deal with them a little better. So we'll find out.
Okay, yeah, I was wondering about the scope because, you know, their Midwest Carpet Restoration, I went to their website and they focus on carpet clean, then clean, mitigating, restoring your damaged property after some sort of natural disaster, storm, you know, fire, that kind of thing.
Right.
So it's more like, it seems, at least from the web presence, focusing more on restoration, remediation than renovation. So I wanted to make sure that you feel they have the capabilities and the experience to do an entire house type renovation that we're asking for versus carpet cleaning and, you know, the kind of work they were focused on, at least advertising on their website.
And we see that with a lot of the people that are emergency board-up companies. They use that as a way to get this kind of work. This is the foot in the door kind of work, so.
So you're recommending them, you trust that they have the expertise to know how to handle a project of this size capably?
Yeah, and they're gonna have to have qualified licensed electricians, plumbers, whatnot to do the work, so, I'm hoping they have good subs that can get that done.
Okay, great, thank you.
Mr. Asha?
Yeah, usually a restoration contractor, they have to do many tasks, so there's a lot they do. So, I mean, I have no problem with it. I'd like to make a motion to approve.
I'll support that.
Moved by Mr. Isha, supported by Mr. Frederick. Mr. Frederick?
Yeah, Chris, first off, what are we going to do with the pink chimney?
The chimney comes out,
The chimney's coming down?
yeah.
Okay. I'm sure everybody in the neighborhood's going to be very depressed about losing their pink chimney, which you very
Well,
nicely
it's
camouflaged with that tree there.
It is,
And-
it's in poor condition, and it's
Yeah.
just as expensive to fix something that bad than
It
to
just
take
looks
it down.
horrible too, I mean. But more importantly, the siding on this house, that's not asbestos siding, is it?
That is probably asbestos siding, but we don't have to remove it to reside the house. We can
But we would-
encapsulate it.
We would leave it in place.
Yes.
All right, I'm just worried that we're going to
The
get
tile in the basement is asbestos. That's coming out. That's
Okay.
part of the bid.
Well, I just don't want to get a big change order for the outside siding.
It's going to stay.
Okay. All right, that's all I had.
Mr. Karen?
Chris, actually, with that picture that's up there, the second one of the basement, a little water trail?
Yes.
And we don't have anything in the basement for waterproofing.
There's,
So is there a reason for?
yeah, above that back door, there's a piece of the basement wall that's cracked out. Then there's a gap in the wall, and that's where the water's coming in at. And so
Okay.
it's called out to be repaired, and when.
That's in the foundation work then to repair, not in the basement?
I think it's actually just called out on the plan.
Okay,
As I recall, it's not a specific line item, but I think it's on the drawing if I remember right.
okay. All right, thank you.
Mr. Vitale?
Chris, we talked a little bit about the porch on this house. Are we gonna do anything with that porch to?
We're not going to make it bigger. We're just going to, and I don't have the, well,
I also remember like it had uneven stair heights or something like
yeah,
that.
it's going to be repaired and not expanded, because when I started thinking about what this house was going to cost, I figured that's going to be a very expensive addition, and it'd probably tilt the project. So I ended up not adding the expansion of the porch and expanding the roof, but that's all going to open up and have a totally different look to it. Let's see.
Oh, I see what you're doing there.
So we're going to open up the front of it and have a hanging light and some little gingerbread on the porch instead of the pegboard that they have
Yeah.
around it now.
Yeah, it really is pegboard, like you
Yeah.
could put hooks on that and
You
store
could.
tools on it or something. Yeah, that's great. I've seen that done on other homes. I think that's really kind of brings it into the modern era, the way you're gonna handle that. There's one other thing I just wanna mention and make sure I'm on Maxine here. Okay, and that is the circumstances surrounding this home, because I'm going to raise it with another item later tonight. So I'm going to read from your summary here. The previous owner passed away, and his caregiver was evicted from the property. So I believe the circumstance was caregiver stayed on after and didn't pay any taxes, essentially. And either he didn't have family or the family didn't have any interest in taking on the property, one of the two. So I just want to point out that this is one of the circumstances. There's always a story, but it's not atypical for there to be a story like this with these tax foreclosures. And I would say this home is really not in livable condition as is. Certainly not with the hole in the basement and the water coming in and things like that. It doesn't have the usual, homemade electrical and things like that, but I would still not get a rodent infestation and things like that in this home. It was a hoarder house, I believe. It was pretty packed with stuff. It smelled. So, I'm bringing that up because it's going to come up later in the meeting, just the circumstances. So, I'll make a motion to approve.
It's already been made by Mr. Asher,
sorry.
supported by Mr. Frederick. You're good. You're good?
Yeah.
Okay. So moved by Mr. Asher, supported by Mr. Frederick to award it to Midwest Property Restoration in the amount of $74,166. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. 8C is to request to award the contract to Mando Construction for the renovation of 31062 Manhattan. Mr. Reyes.
So this one is the one that had 11 bidders appear on the mandatory walkthrough, 4 bids. 68,000 is the low to Mando Construction, with the high bid being 139,405. We have worked with Mando before. They did the renovation on Bayside, probably 6-7 years ago. I would guess it's been already. This house on Manhattan, it's a nice 3-bedroom brick ranch. Backs up to the former Kroger at 13 and Harper. It has in the kitchen new lowers but old uppers. It's just kind of a funky layout, the way the kitchen's laid out. Front room, it does have a lot of staining in the floors. They had a cat that kind of ruined some of the floors. We think we can salvage them though. The bathroom in this house has been recently renovated. We're just going to paint it.
That's right, yeah.
The other bedrooms are mostly just clean up and resanding the floors. It has this shower in the basement that needs, it's okay. It has a little work that we need to do and nothing too spectacular. And we're just going to clean up the paneling and clean up the bar a little bit in the basement, just make it a little brighter and a little more fresh. And that's it.
Questions? Mr. Vitale.
Chris, I think you missed the biggest issue with this house, unfortunately. That was the back porch, which is collapsing.
It's a different house.
We actually had that taken down already because there's so much rot in that flat roof that they put in there. I was concerned that it was going to had caused damage to the garage and to the house.
Okay.
Fortunately, they've attached it to the freeze board and over-roofed it onto the garage. All the rot was concentrated in that structure and the paneling. So that was removed separately ahead of time so we can see what we're getting into.
Well, I guess to the point that I was going to make again later in the meeting, I wish you had a picture of it, because the damage from that was unbelievable. I mean, I couldn't believe how much water had undermined the patio. And I mean, it was like, must have been every time it rained, like a pressure washer shooting underneath the slab.
Yeah.
So, again, this home doesn't look too bad in pictures, but there's nothing like really getting out there and getting your feet into this house. And I think that, whoever owned this house was simply overwhelmed. I mean, unless you're a contractor, I wouldn't want to take this house on.
Yeah. And we don't have the ability to share with the way these homes smell a lot of times when we get to them. And
Yes.
So there is a third dimension or a fourth dimension to these homes that they look really good, but there's a little more to them.
Yeah, again, I mean, I'm sure in the 70s that was a happening basement, but we're 40 years away from that now. And, again, just emphasizing the fact that there's health and safety concerns in a lot of these homes that we end up taking over for foreclosure.
Yeah, and the last house, you didn't really catch them probably in the pictures, but there's actually Romex wires with electrical boxes on the floor in the bedrooms to upgrade the wires.
Oh.
There's splices, open splices in the basement that make these connections. This house has some of that, not nearly like Maxine, but there's some pretty scary stuff in these homes.
You know what, Chris, well, as long as I still have the floor, I do want to make another point that actually goes back to Maxine, and that is that the idea that we have a new contractor that we're going to take on, and I think that speaks well for the idea, too, that we're not just having a favorite. We are, if you're a new contractor and you come in and you present a reasonable bid and good references, you've got a good chance at getting the work. So I just think that's important.
And most of those bidders this time were newer bidders. There's a few that we've had before. But most of the ones that have done work recently were not at this walkthrough for whatever reason.
Well, I did drive by our Mando house the other day on Bayside, because I periodically will drive past these houses just to kind of see if they're being kept up, and that house looks great. I almost wish I'd bought it, but I guess that would have been a conflict, right? So,
Mr. Frederick.
Yeah, first off, this is the absolute last house at the end of Manhattan. I mean,
Almost, yeah.
they're-
It's a kind of baby cul-de-sac, so.
No, the
I had a hell of a
next
time finding
house
it.
is on Dorian.
It's actually
Yeah.
Dorian, you're
Yeah.
right.
It's on Dorian.
It wasn't easy to find.
No, and at first I
Funky in
didn't think it had a garage. I drove up the driveway to see if there was a garage. And it sits kind of odd sideways. kinda
Yeah,
gotta
they
go
used
in.
it to hide the back of the Kroger store, so it
I-
makes for
I
a nice
get it.
little
I get it,
patio
because
area in there.
the store back there with the garbage, the dumpsters and all that kind of out in the open, maybe that's something we should look at too, under another thing. But getting back to the house does sit way better than Maxine ever did.
Yeah.
And the tree out front is sort of overgrown. What are we doing with that?
Yeah, we'll clean all that up. When we get it close to selling, we'll get it all cleaned up and ready to go.
Okay, all right. I'll move to approve this.
Support.
Moved by Mr. Frederick, supported by Mr. Karen. On the question by Mr. Vitale.
Chris, Councilman Fredericks actually jogged my memory on something I'd forgotten about, and that was the idea of basically looking at the alley of Kroger, which is not too pretty. Do we have something in landscaping to maybe screen this with some arbs or something like that to soften up that, so we're not looking at an alley of the store?
We were looking at doing some fencing, and I had reached out to the neighbor to the south, because there's both the privacy fence and the chain link fence, and he wanted to talk about the possibility of changing his fence at the same time. So I left
Okay,
the
good.
fencing and the screening separate, and we'll do that as a separate piece. And I'll get with them once we kind of
Yeah,
figure
maybe we
out-
can split a
Does it-
fencing quote or something to.
Does
Can we
that
make it
cement
work?
go right to the wall, though, the driveway cement?
It does not. It's about 6 feet short, maybe, 5, 6 feet short of the wall.
The other thing pertaining to that is, I know the time that we were there visiting, which was months ago now, I did comment on the overflowing dumpsters and the general condition of that building. Let's use this being on site here frequently as an opportunity to hammer home the need to keep that alley clean and not have dumpsters overflowing. If that owner of that building is still collecting rent from Kroger, he's, without any of the wear and tear, he's got plenty of money to keep those dumpsters changed and keep maintenance up on that property. Also, that was, I think I noticed maybe on the trip over there, that was the driveway that was crumbled. Has that been replaced?
They were pouring that, I think it was last week I saw them replacing that driveway.
Great, thank you.
Moved by Mr. Frederick, supported by Mr. Karen, to award it to Mando Construction in the amount of $68,500 for 31062 Manhattan. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, 6-0. Thank you. Item 8D is to purchase order amendment for CDI inspection of the City of Roseville for 2019-2020. Mr. Reyes?
So this PO request is because we completed more rentals than anticipated. And so our PO will not cover the extra work, so we're just asking for enough money to carry it through to the end of this fiscal year to pay for the rentals. And that's even with doing almost 3 months less rentals this year because of COVID, because we shut it down for COVID. So this is just to cover the work that's been done and the little bit we're doing in June.
Ms. Rusi?
Is this because more homes and properties are becoming rentals, or is this because we're doing a better job of finding the ones that aren't registered, or what do you think the driver of this is?
We're just getting more done on a consistent basis.
Thank you.
Mr. Karen?
So, Chris, so the original PO was 350,000, right?
That's for
For all inspections?
everything, right.
Okay.
Mhm.
And but because rentals weren't a part of that original bid, it was, you know,
It was subsequent
we
to,
dismissed the previous contractor and went to the second one, which was Roseville, a couple years ago.
right,
But we never called out the rental inspection portion of that separately since then.
correct.
And that, so that's kind of why you're coming back with this one with the increase, because we do have it merged in. In the past, it didn't exceed the total amount, but now it did because we had rentals in there driving that.
And we're changing
That
the
would have to
way
come in here.
we account for that to be separate for rentals outside the inspections too.
Right, okay. And I did notice in the PO for this next year, you do have them as separate line items for both.
Correct.
And then that gets bidded out in
think
the
it's-
next
I
year.
think in January, they're scheduled to go
Okay.
out to bid.
And then, and Matt, can you let us know kind of how we, because we bidded them out separately before. I don't know in terms of, make sure we've got competitive bidders with, Roseville. We want to make sure that the language is so that it would allow for others to come in. Sometimes we can merge all this stuff together and it does kind of like end up eliminating competition, so. And I don't know if there's any other firms out there in the last, we only had 3 bidders even back then, maybe 5 years ago when we
Yep.
did the inspection
Right.
bids, so want to make sure we're not limiting the field, even if there is anyone else out there that'd still be doing it, so.
Maybe more now.
Mr. Vitale?
Yeah, again, more for Matt than for Chris, but I'd really like to see this on a, come back in July on a follow-ups from prior council meetings, because when your predecessor was here, we made it clear that we really wanted this to be a function of the rental inspector, that one of his job duties would be to seek out unregistered rentals. And I have been asking seemingly since forever for examples that we're doing that. So of course that would be part of any job description going forward, and if it's being done now, then I guess I'd like to see some evidence of it and how it's being done, how they're sniffing them out. I mean, I have some ideas on how it could be done, but, they're supposed to be doing it, so I want to know how they're doing it. Because I think, honestly, we get, time to time, there's a push that, well, instead of 3-year inspections, we should go to 2-year inspections. But that's really just catching up people that are already following the rules. I'm more interested in finding the renegades who don't want to play by the rules. So.
Okay. Motion to be in order?
Motion to approve.
Moved by Mr. Ashe, supported by Mr. Karen, to approve the PO amendment for City of Roseville for the rental inspection services. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? 6-0. Thank you. AD request approval for the bid alternate for 2 additional years for professional service for code enforcement, Code V, and the approval of blanket purchase order for 2020-21. Mr. Reyes.
Hey, Mayor and Council, as I wrote up in the memo, this contract expires June 30th this year. On my part, I was thinking they all expired next June 30th, so it was my fault that this is coming so late to you. But we did bid this with 2 alternate years back when we did this 5 years ago. We're presented tonight for 1, none, or 3 months, whatever you're comfortable with, just to keep us going till we can put it back out to bid. I gave you the original minutes and the schedule of the rates. There was the one error in the 7th year, if you went that way, which the one spreadsheet corrects that. He put the overtime number in both columns as opposed to the inflationary adjusted number. So year 7 would be 4150, not 58, or not 5625 like he had in there originally. So I'm asking for your concurrence on one of those options, just so we don't run out of time with this contractor.
Questions? Mr. Frederick?
Yeah, I would move to approve the 2 additional years. I mean, the bidding is significantly lower than any of the other ones that are on here, so.
Support.
Seems pretty easy.
Questions by Mr. Vitale?
Yeah, I'm afraid I don't know that I can support a 2-year extension on this, and I'm gonna say why. I've asked many times, again, this goes back to your predecessor, Mr. Koppler, to know what they're doing, and I've never really gotten a good answer. And I still see conditions that I shouldn't see, even things like the signs at the freeway ramps and things like that, which for a while seemed to be going pretty good. And then I found out it was a police department that was doing that, not the people we pay to do it. And there's been times that I've asked, are we doing anything on Saturdays? And the answer I got back was, they don't want to work Saturdays. Well, sometimes I don't either, but if I have to work a Saturday, I have to work a Saturday. So I'm just not confident. I would almost say 6 months, but I don't want to have to do this in the middle of December. And I can't expect, with all the COVID and everything else that went on, I can't expect you to rebuild our code enforcement department, and actually make us maybe not be completely complaint driven. So I'm going to be a no on 2 years, but depending on how that goes, I would maybe offer a counter proposal to go to 1 year. And we need to either get them up to speed with what we want or put it back out for bid.
Ms. Rusi?
Thank you. I was a no back in 2015 on 5 years. So reading the minutes for the reasons cited there, and we did not award at the time years 6 and 7, so I'm not going to support this extension.
Mr. Karen?
Yeah, actually, I think in terms of Councilman Vitale, the remarks, a lot of that is what direction I think that they're being given. Because if they're not given the told to give them the task that, hey, this is part of your job of, if you see a sign, pick up a sign. So some of that might be more us internally versus the company, because I think from them as a company and the work that I've seen, I've never heard any complaints of unprofessionalism, that it seems like all the documentation that they get is good. And so I think the job that they are there to do, I think they've been doing. I even witnessed it, they drove by my house one day, saw my neighbor had long grass. Even though it's directly across the street from a councilman, neighbor of a councilman, they didn't care. They saw it was a violation. They put out the violation and that. So without being asked as a drive-by. So I do know they do that as well. So I think they're doing a good job. I would support the 2 years. And then they would go out to bid, not this next year, but the following year after that.
Correct.
Other questions? Moved by Mr. Frederick, supported by Mr. Asha to award the additional 2 years to Code V. Mary, roll call vote.
Councilmember Frederick.
Aye.
Councilmember Asha.
Aye.
Councilmember Karen.
Aye.
Councilmember Rusi.
No.
Councilmember Vitale.
No.
Mayor Walby.
Aye. Passes 4-2. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. And Ms. Rusi?
Item F, request to approve the TIFA recommendation regarding Gotcha Mobility temporary lease of storage space.
Gotcha.
You're not going to ride that over there?
I want to see a demo. I want to see how this works. You got plenty of room.
Yeah, I agree. I want to see a slalom.
Took these chairs out just for you.
The bathhouse storage area, please.
Bill's like, just let me do the presentation first.
Yeah,
good
before you
evening,
knock
Mayor
the
and
podium
Council.
over.
The City of St. Clair Shores Tax Increment Finance Authority solicited proposals for a nautical mile bike share program. The group reviewed proposals and ultimately entered into a contract with Gotcha Mobility in April last year. The purpose of the bike share scooter program was to provide residents and visitors additional transportation options throughout the nautical mile. Last year, the launch was delayed due to technical issues with Gotcha's mobile application. Since then, though, this issue has been resolved. Gotcha requested city warehouse space to store the initial St. Clair Shores fleet, a fleet that would start with scooters. After reviewing the space requirements, it was determined that an ideal space exists in the newly remodeled bathhouse at Blossom Heath. So on the screen, you'll see that's the space, which is on the northwest corner, kind of has an overhead door and kind of fits the needs that they have. It would also kind of provide some activity in the bathhouse right off the bat as well. Gotcha would use this space to charge and stage the St. Clair Shores fleet and would pay for their electrical use. The closest areas where Gotcha currently provides micro-mobility services is the city of East Lansing, Michigan State University area, and Toledo, Ohio. Approval of this request would authorize Gotcha to use storage space in Blossom Heath Bathhouse through October 31st, 2020. So at this time, I would like to turn it over to Nick Ross from Gotcha to provide council and residents some additional background on the company and the product he brought. Thank you.
Let's start with the demonstration, huh? You guys wanted to see it? We'll see it.
There we go. It's almost as fast
Wide
as I
shot,
can
wide
walk.
shot. Is it going to stay here after the meeting for us to try?
You doing that, Pete?
That was literally hold my beer moment.
I got something a little bigger, all right.
Hold my beer.
This actually is one of the scooters that is part of the St. Clair Shores fleet. I have all 50 of them staged and ready to go. I'm also the operations manager in East Lansing, and we've got a room right now dedicated just to a bunch of these guys. Not going out on the street anywhere until they're here. So this actually is scooter number 25. All of them are 6-digit numerical code numbers. So you guys have 1 through 50, and this is one of yours. So just have a little PowerPoint presentation tonight, so you can actually just go right past this slide. So we're Gotcha. We believe in sustainable, accessible transportation, and we want this to be safe, we want it to be fun, and overall, we want it to be accessible. And that is why we're here today, to utilize some space for you guys so that it can be accessible to all the riders that potentially are here. And that is actually a picture of our CEO, Sean Flood, right on deck, giving away a bike right now, and we can go past that one. So who are we? We have over 100 mobility systems, and actually that number is grown quite a bit and will grow exponentially over the next year. We have a plan in place. We've got 15,000 assets, 50 of which belong to you. We have over 10 million annual trips, and actually that data is a little outdated. It's closer to 11. And so this is just a brief history of our brand. In 2009, our CEO, Sean Flood, like many others, was affected by the Great Recession. And he took a big risk. He did something a little crazy. He went out and he started a rideshare program. That was before Uber, that was before Lyft. He was driving people around in a golf cart down in Fort Lauderdale where he was. Down in Fort Lauderdale. And over the next 5 years, he operated different rideshare programs all across the United States based around events. We were at Burning Man one year. We've been at Coachella. Bunch of different concerts and venues, and in 2016, he launched our first ever bike share program. So that was the first time that he purchased assets, put them on the ground, and said, hey, these are yours to rent. That took off really well. In 2018, we expanded to include electric bikes, electric scooters, and electric mopeds. And 2019 really should say 2019 and beyond, because our goal is to redefine transportation. It's changing the way people move around a downtown metropolitan area. It's getting people out of single occupancy cars and onto a shared device that has a much lower impact on the environment. It has a much more usability in terms of it's not sitting on the street for one person's access. It's anybody can go up and use that. It's not taking up space. So this is a brief overview of our sort of team. That's Sean Flood, our CEO. He's also our founder. Ryan Leach, our CFO, CSO, and Morgan, our Chief Marketing Officer, who, if you ever have the pleasure to meet, one of the best people to work with, and David Tausma, our COO. I am an operations manager. I'll be both overseeing St. Clair Shores and East Lansing. We also have our fleet techs, who will be my direct reports. It'll be the people on the street, rebalancing scooters, cleaning scooters, making sure that everything out there is A+ for your riders. And we also have our mobility ambassadors, although that title is going to potentially change. It's sort of in the works. Think of them as brand sponsors. It's the people out there who are driving people to try them out. It's getting our name out there. It's putting our brand in front of faces. So this is a bit of a showcase of our options currently. We have an all-electric fleet. We have 2.0 bikes, which are fully pedal-powered, and then we have our 3.0 bikes, which are electric and pedal-powered. We have our scooters, which I have here today, and we have our sit-down scooters. This is just a little brief showcase of our application. If none of you have looked at our app yet, I cannot encourage you more to download it. It is one of the most intuitive apps you will use. We pride ourselves on our technology. A bunch of R&D has gone into this, and it is genuinely beautiful to use. I was a customer before I was an employee, and I chose Gotcha because of the technology. So this is just an overview of our bikes. They are 100% electric. They have a 350-watt motor. They are GPS-enabled smart locks. And they actually don't have this on here, but they have removable batteries. All of them are swappable, so there's no lifting bikes in and out of stuff. You're not going to see different bikes, moving around. It's just we pop out a battery, we pop one in. And these are our scooters, but this is actually an older slide. This is the newest model of our scooters. These are the 3.0s. The one you're seeing up there is a 2.0. Very similar, but just a little better in this package. Still the 250 to 350 watt motor, still limited electronically to 15 miles per hour, still an aluminum rust-resistant frame, still have the front and rear lights. All of that's true, except for the 18 to 20 minutes per charge. These actually get 30 to 40 minutes per charge, and that's a straight-up ride time. That is not 80 or 30 to 40 minutes of sitting on the street. That is turning it on. You can ride for 30 to 40 minutes without stopping. And that is our seated scooter. Very similar. That is actually due to a merger with Ojo, company formerly known as Ojo, now known as Gotcha. And they have baskets on the rear. They have front and rear disc brakes. They actually can go 50 miles per charge, and they go a little quicker. They can go up to 25 miles an hour.
Oh.
And so what is a mobility hub? So what you're looking at there is two examples. One is for bikes, one is for scooters. Scooters, much more simple. You put some tape on the ground, people can park them there. It's a geofence. They lock them when they put them there, and you can't ride them unless you rent them. Bikes, similar situation, except you actually have a rack, and our bikes are designed to work with any existing bike rack. So if there was a location where it was, oh, can we start deploying them here? As long as there's a bike rack, that's an option. And where will hubs be? So this is a sort of preemptive map. However, given that this is a pilot, we really, really encourage this to be very fluid, for both sides. It's, if riders want a hub moved, I mean, 9 times out of 10, we try to move it. If we have 300 people telling us, hey, this hub, if it was 20 feet down the road, we would all love it. We try and work with that. And same scenario, if it was the city said, hey, we want to utilize this public space, we need this hub to be moved, we keep it really fluid and try and keep everything light. So this is sort of the system scope for you guys. We have 50 e-bikes planned, 50 scooters ready, and we want this to grow. We want to be here for a long time. We're not in here to come in and come out. We want to be here for years to come.
Nice. Right on. Right on.
Anything else, Bill, before we turn to questions?
There is. Do we have a slide for that?
We do, and then also there's a virtual hub example of what we do. You want to go over the COVID?
Yeah, so the COVID plan, you know, we, like many other companies, had to sort of put something together so that we could continue operating. And we have now been deemed essential in almost all of our markets, including in East Lansing. And the first paragraph, really, what I want that to be read is that this is a living, breathing document. I want it to be read as anything that you guys find that you need to change, absolutely will do so. If you come to us and say, hey, you know, we need X, Y, and Z done, we just don't think that it's being covered, we have no problem implementing that. We have done that for every market that we've had. Also, on the other hand of that, the person I report to directly is actually also our safety manager, and he is constantly looking at the CDC's website. I have been given, I think we're now on our 4th iteration since last month of our protocols, and he is constantly implementing new procedures. He is on top of the ball with everything that the CDC is providing and making sure that we are at the very, very top of our game. Otherwise, it is enhanced, more frequent cleaning of scooters. We use only CDC-approved products that are proven to kill the COVID-19 strain of the coronavirus. All of our staff on the onboarding process and when COVID hit are briefed on personal protection and also personal hygiene. All of them are required to wash their hands for 20 seconds at the very beginning of their shift so that we know that they are coming in with clean hands. And they're also required to wear personal protection gear while they're out on the streets. That includes a mask and gloves.
Thank you, Nick. I think with that, we'll take any questions that council has.
Mr. Isha?
Yeah, I have a question. So, tell me how this works. You have to go to Blossom Heath to pick it up, or are they, because I've been in Lansing, or U of M, and they're laying all over the place. So are there stations, or do I have to go to Blossom Heath, get one, go?
So they are all kept at stations, at hubs. So one thing that we pride ourselves on is that we, unlike our competitors, don't just throw stuff on the street. We are not going to, be littering our scooters all over the place. You're not going to be finding them sitting in the middle of the road anywhere. All of our scooters have to start at a point and end at a point, and that's encouraged through charges, and also our fleet techs are required to go get them within a certain amount of time if it's left outside of a hub. So you will have to go get it from a certain set point, and you can park it at any of the hubs, but it has to return to one of those so that it's not, laying in the middle of the street. It's not getting in the flow of traffic of sidewalks, whatnot.
So any hub, I drop my credit card in there, and I can go for 30 minutes, park it, and go get another one. How much is the cost?
It is $1 to unlock, and then it is 20 cents per minute.
Oh, okay, that's reasonable. And will you have bikes also?
Yes, bikes are on the way. We have ordered them, but they are currently on hold due to COVID-19. China's just not shipping right now, so.
Okay, well, it's pretty cool, I like it.
Ms. Rusi?
Thank you. Well, tonight, just before us is a lease agreement to already enter into the master services agreement, the whole concept. So it's just the temporary storage lease agreement with the space at the bathhouse. I do have a question, though, operationally. Looking at the presentation, all the photographs of people utilizing your scooters on page like 6, 9, and 13 of the presentation, they're all shown wearing helmets. Even on page 13, there's a Gotcha branded helmet. Will you be providing helmets to users?
So we do have Gotcha branded helmets that we carry at all of our events, and usually when there's a launch, we try and host some sort of an event, and we do give away free helmets generally, but we don't provide them, they're not hung on every scooter.
Okay, so if you're a user, you won't be having a helmet provided. You'd have to anticipate the scooter being there and bring your own?
That's correct.
Okay, I've, about this whole concept and platform, I've expressed concerns to St. Manager Koppler as well as his predecessor. So this is just a lease agreement, but I won't be voting for this tonight. Thank you.
Mr. Vitale?
I guess more or less just a question about operationally. It's not going to affect a vote or anything like that, more curiosity. For the COVID procedures and for the idea of not having them laying around in the wrong places, is there a person dedicated to St. Clair Shores?
Yes, so I will be overseeing it from Lansing. However, I actually am from the area. I grew up downriver, so this is sort of close to home to me. But there will be a point person that I hire here that will be the kind of director in-house, if you will. That will be the one overseeing operations day to day while I'm in Lansing.
So does that person make, for lack of a better term, their office is the storage facility? And if there's a report that there's a Gotcha scooter laying somewhere, that's the person that goes and gets it?
Yeah, them and a team of fleet techs.
Pardon that, a team?
Of fleet techs. So it's fleet technicians. So there'll be one point person who's overseeing, but there is a whole team of people that will be collecting scooters and cleaning.
All right, so there's a human element here.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Frederick?
Thanks, Mayor. Great presentation. I love the fact that you're flexible because every city is going to be different. And, you know, if you're going to take information from some of these folks, so that's my first question is, how do people give you feedback? Is it through the app or is it, how are you going to know that hub should be moved 20 feet down?
So I'm actually glad you asked that question because I'm actually probably going to incorporate that into the presentation because that is a question that goes unanswered. We have both an email and a phone number. It's right on top of the scooter and is also every time you end a ride, you have the opportunity to give feedback. And it goes straight to both me, our COO, and also to a whole customer support team that is on call 24/7 to answer the phones and also answer emails.
Okay, my second question, sorry. So you've got mobility ambassadors and fleet techs, and then a point person, and then you. So how many people is that altogether that are going to be in St. Clair Shores at one time or maybe overlapping? Because I'm sure your mobility ambassadors are probably going around to different places, but are they going to be here for like a 3-day stint and do some promotions or give away one of those helmets or 10 of them, whatever?
So our mobility ambassadors, we actually try and encourage it to be parts of the community. We want them to be here. We want it to be people who really are part of St. Clair Shores as a community. We encourage people to step forward to do that role. We don't do much hiring for that role. We generally try and let people come to us.
So it's a volunteer thing or?
It's a paid position, but we don't, we generally don't post it. We wait for somebody who maybe uses our products a lot, and we'll reach out to them and say, hey, we noticed that you're using a scooter 10 times a day. Would you like to be a mobility ambassador for us?
Oh, okay.
But as far as fleet techs go, this is a smaller market, so we're looking at 3 to 4 people, and that's excluding myself, so 5 if you include myself here periodically. So
That's 24 hours?
Yeah.
Okay. And I think that's it. And it is fairly reasonable in terms of pricing, so. Yeah. One more question. I noticed that Ford is getting in this business. Are you considering purchasing it? I mean, where do these come from?
Yeah, so these actually are shipped over from China. These are proprietary. Nobody else, you will not see this scooter used by anyone else.
Okay.
It's designed by us for us. We have a partnership with a company over there that creates these, and that's all of our stuff is proprietary. So you're never going to see a Gotcha bike being used by anybody else. Those are owned by us, and so are all of our parts and maintenance hardware. So we're the only ones who can take them apart and work on them.
Well, I'm hoping that you guys put in your suggestion box that this is Michigan, This is Ford, GM, Chrysler. I'm sure everybody's going to be in the mobility business if they haven't, or if they're not already. So hopefully you guys will consider actually utilizing some of those.
I don't actually know if Ford will be selling them because they own their own service. I'm not actually certain that they're selling the
No,
devices.
they'll be for sale.
They will.
Yeah.
That
From
is
what I can gather, from the people that I've talked to, so.
That is something, and we'll raise up the flagpole then.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Karen?
Thank you. Yeah, like Councilwoman Rusi had stated, this vote tonight is just about the lease agreement for the Blossom Heath area to Gotcha. This was already a project that went through our Tifa board that is meant to kind of enhance the nautical mile area in that. So, so just for that, that's clear for the residents that the vote tonight is not about the program itself, it's about just the leasing of the space. With that being said, so it's good that you clarified the, I was concerned in terms of the 15 to 18 minute charge. The 30 to 40 is definitely better. Do you guys have lease agreements laid out for the other charging spots along the nautical mile in the mapping, or is that still in progress?
So last year, there were a couple businesses that were interested in signing a ground lease agreement. And then we did have one of Gotcha's planners come by and kind of look at different areas. So we have some good ideas of where to place these. I think in terms of like exactly where, that's not, I mean, I think we want to kind of be able to try out a couple spots before we make a definitive. Just thinking about getting the data from the movements to figure out exactly where to, the best place to place these.
All right.
And
So
the interest by the different businesses about who wants it.
right, and what safe space they may have, because, you know, in terms of, one, I think you'd automatically would think of how their building's laid out. It's probably not going to work in terms of proximity to the road and what limited parking they already have in that, and electrical in the building may not work out in that in terms of like some of the more obvious places we would think. So I think that's a lot of, you guys got to consider of, just because the nautical mile is tight, you know, the way the buildings were all originally designed, closer to the road and that. So in terms of any, Councilwoman Rusi also brought up helmets. I'm assuming that if someone downloads the app, there are safety precautions that are being recommended to them. Helmets being one. What about where they're to be using the scooters when they're on the mile? Like, are they being told to stay on sidewalks because 50 miles per hour may not be good on the roadway itself if the people aren't being careful? So what type of precautions are being taken?
Yeah, so when you do download the app, you accept a user agreement, and all of that's contained within there. Both you're accepting liability for yourself, so the helmets are covered in that. And
We've all accepted terms of use stuff that no one has ever read.
Yeah,
So
well,
what is going to be blatantly obvious to the user, what precautions they should be taking in this area?
Yeah, there is a sticker on the scooters, and it's on every single one of them. I know that because I stickered these myself. It's always wear a helmet. You must be 18 and up, or 18 or older to ride. You always have to do one rider per scooter and obey local traffic laws. Now, why do we have that on there? Because, for instance, up in East Lansing, they actually don't want our scooters on the sidewalks. It is encouraged to use a bike lane. If there is a bike lane, you have to be in that bike lane. So it's obey local traffic laws because every market's different. We can't say blanket statement, stay on the sidewalk, because some people don't want them on the sidewalks. They have bike paths and whatnot. So that's one that is sort of gray.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mr. Erie?
Mr. Mayor, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Does the user agreement include a release of Gotcha?
Yes.
Will it also include a release of the St. Clair Shores Tax Increment Finance Authority and the city?
That actually might be answered better by you.
Yeah, the user, we did have that in the amendment document, was the indemnification of specifically stating the city, and the tax increment finance authority.
I understand that that's an agreement between Gotcha and Tifa and us. But I would certainly recommend that the user agreement not only include a release of Gotcha, but it also include a release of Tifa and the city of St. Clair Shores.
Yeah, I can set up something with my general counsel and Bill to discuss that further.
So, Bill, you want to make sure you work through the city attorney with this, right?
Yes, I will.
Okay. Mr. Vitale?
Bob, that's a very good catch. So, I mean, to me, that's a deal breaker if it's not. I'm sure the gentleman's probably not convinced or adequately prepared to speak for his counsel. But this may be the only thing that we get a vote on this, because Tifa has already approved it. But again, that's a very good catch, and I don't want to put the city at risk if somebody just decides that they're going to ride across Jefferson and they get hit and they're going to sue the city.
But we could make a motion that we approve.
Could
and
make
that-
it conditional?
Yeah, so that Mr. Erie signs off on it.
Yeah, I think we got to do that.
Yeah, I would agree. And then,
You earned your pay tonight, Bob.
I think that's the way we do it. So we'll need a motion, and I would believe it should include the sign off of the city attorney for that.
Last question.
Yep.
So assuming we get this all done and approved, when are these going to be available?
So that is actually completely up to you. I mean, I'm ready to put these out on the street whenever we are ready. They're ready to go, nothing holding them back.
All right, so Bob, expedience is the watchword on this one. I'll make a motion to approve the lease agreement, subject to all of the language that is going to be added to the user agreement by our city attorney.
And
Talking Bob
right.
through you.
And signed off by the city attorney.
And signed off by the city attorney.
Support.
Moved by Mr. Frederick, supported by Mr. Asha. Question by Ms. Rusi.
Thank you. I know bikes are also part of the agreement. Those are coming later, I suppose. Will this lease agreement include storage space for the bikes, or would that be?
Yes, the storage space would include for both bikes and scooters.
And do you know when the bikes are anticipated to be here too?
We do not have a date yet. We've reached out to our supplier numerous times, but they haven't been able to give us a
Yeah,
date.
because I know this was, I think, last spring with the hopes that was going to be last summer, and then there were issues with their company performing, so.
Yeah, so I came on in March, so whatever happened.
I'm not
previous-
blaming you, I'm
Oh, no,
blaming
no,
your
I
company.
understand. I understand. I was saying, so I'm actually here to be the boots on the ground, and I'm really pushing for St. Clair Shores because it's kind of closer to home for me, and I really want to be here.
Downriver. You got to move.
Thank you.
You understand the motion, Mary and Bob, you got it, right?
I do.
Moved by Mr. Frederick, supported by Mr. Asha. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
5-1. Thank you. So Bill, get that together, work with Bob, and we'll get move quickly on that. Please. Item 8G, request approval of dock replacement for the 9-mile boat launch.
Oh.
Mr. Bowman, Parks and Rec Director.
We're seeing you on TV.
I don't get a chance. I get a chance to ride the bike. Just left.
Yes, our 9-mile boat ramp has gone through, the dock there has gone through the ringer. A car hit it. We ended up catching it floating down the canal, brought it back in, but it went through the ringer. We were able to do some minor repairs, but they are not going to hold. So we've been looking for an emergency dock and a replacement dock, and wanted to do something that would last. We could use it if our plans went forward with the closing of the 9-mile ramp, that we could use this someplace else. And with the high water and everything fluctuating, I was thinking that a replacement dock would, floating dock would work out the best. And so went out searching as much as we could. We found a few companies out there that was doing them. It appears the Easy Dock by Blue Water Docks provides us with the best option. So, ask the council's blessing and approval for the dock through Blue Water Docks in an amount of $11,286.
Mr. Asha?
I just have a question here. Did you catch the guy that hit it?
No.
There's no cameras?
No, there's no
any
cameras there.
investigation? Because wouldn't insurance cover this?
Sure, it would be, I don't think it's high enough on our deductible, is it, or? It is?
Yeah, I think we have a property deductible of $1,000, don't we?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, great, so it will be covered, hopefully.
Most of it.
All right, fantastic.
Move to approve.
Moved by Mr. Frederick,
Support.
supported by Mr. Asha. Do you have a question? Mr. Frederick?
I just want to say, Henry, and I know we talked about this a little bit, I was out there today, and actually was talking to some folks and watching people walking on the current one that's there. We got to get that changed ASAP, because
Right.
it is flimsy, and I'm worried somebody's going to fall in the water or something like that. The sooner we can get that there, the better, and for 60 foot of 10-foot wide dock, this is a good deal, even under emergency circumstances.
It's 60 inches by 10-foot dock section, so it's actually 40 feet long, exactly, it's pretty close to the exact size we have now.
It says on here 60 foot by 10-foot dock section. So you might be getting more.
No, it's 60 inches
Oh.
by 10 foot.
Oh, I see, and four of them.
Yep.
Got it.
Yep.
5 by 10,
Okay,
yeah.
got it. Need another little slash. All right, thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Vitale.
Just a comment, I think we were made aware of this by a resident who said it was floating away.
Right.
So I want to thank the resident for letting us know before it got to Canada.
Absolutely.
Moved by
For
Mr.
once, Facebook really helps out.
Yeah, for once, basically.
Moved by Mr.
Sorry about that.
Moved by Mr. Frederick, supported by Mr. Asha to award the replacement dock to Blue Water Docks in the amount of $11,286. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? 6-0. Henry, thank you.
Thanks.
Item 9 is consent agenda.
So I think Councilman Vitale, you want 9G separated?
How about we move to approve?
And then I want two of the purchase orders, one with the Great Lakes Turf on chemicals and fertilizers, and one with, from Mary for the Municode. So I'd make a motion to approve the rest.
Support. I mean, all right, Great Lakes, that's,
That
Two
top
there, Great
is
Lakes.
9HI2
yep. And then what, the other one, I'm sorry, was the,
is 9HV3.
okay, gotcha. And then Mr. Vitale
You did that
wanted
well.
the
9G.
out. Okay.
No
Anyone
worries.
else? Motion was made, did you, I'm sorry, you made that, Mr.
Yes,
Karen?
I
And
did.
did someone support it?
Support.
Moved by Mr. Asha with those three pulled out. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed. And I'll just start with the top, so I'll go to Mr. Vitale, because you're right, he requested that regarding the request approval, so we all, for the City of St. Clair Shores to participate in the Pay As You Stay program under the expanded Keep Macomb Your Home program implemented by the Macomb County Treasurer, Mr. Vitale.
The reason I wanted to pull that out, and it's unfortunate, I pulled that and brought it to work, and I think I left it at work. Does anybody have a
Oh, yeah, here you
copy
go.
of G?
Sure you do. Sure. There you go.
Thank you.
Sure.
What this is the Macomb County Treasurer sort of creating an income qualification for relief on tax foreclosures. We already do something just like this at the city level, and the county treasurer has been giving this option for years, maybe decades. I think what's happening here is they're essentially looking to do what they've always done, setting up some language, and asking us to buy in on the idea of there's several tiers to this, and I'm going to have to put glasses on here for a second.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah, I know. Okay. I did consult with our treasurer on this, and it's probably just best to paraphrase a little bit with her, what she wrote. It appears the only way a resident would receive a reduction in the tax bill itself is if they already had a poverty exemption granted by the city and thus are in Tier 1. The other three tiers look like they are just waiving interest, which the city doesn't collect. Our poverty exemption lowers the tax due to 3.5% of a person's income, which in most cases is about $450. The county then says for Tier 1 that they would lower the taxes to 10% of the taxable value. Even our lowest valued condo has a taxable value of more than $4,500, so our residents won't see a reduction. The next part says that the poverty recipient could receive a 10% reduction if they pay in full on the amount due, which in most cases would be less than $45, and we have roughly 20 people approved a year. What I'm concerned about with this is that it just becomes a pay-as-you-go, and that some of these foreclosure situations, instead of concluding in 3 years, which is already a good amount of time, will drag out for 4 or 5 years. And our Department of Assessing head, Terry Sosha, already voiced some concerns over the way that the RAP program, the water bill program, is administered, even pointed out an example of a landlord that was receiving the benefit. And the worst that can happen is they continue to receive the benefit for the rest of the year, and then next year they kick them out of the program. So I just think there's an opportunity here that this could be potentially rife with fraud. I think the only houses that this is really going to matter are paid for homes, because mortgage companies are going to be on this much quicker than the county is. So typically these homes are paid for, and what we on tax foreclosure find is that it's either a situation like was raised earlier. We had, in this particular one, is a caregiver that kind of stayed behind and squatted. I don't want to give the opportunity for that situation to drag out further. Or simply people walking away that own the house, and they may be, and we've seen situations too where someone inherits a fully paid for home and then just is overwhelmed by the responsibility of home ownership. I don't want those situations dragging out longer. And this is very limited benefit to our residents. It's all under the auspices of COVID-19. You know, I don't want to be dealing with COVID-19 property tax exemptions in 2024. So I'm going to encourage us to vote against accepting this language and resolution.
And a motion?
And I'll make that a motion.
Support.
Moved by Mr. Vitale, supported by Mr. Karen, with a question by Mr. Karen.
Thank you. Yeah, and just to clarify, that is, we're not joining the pays part of it, which is their Tier 1 version, right? Because we have no say on the other tiers.
That's right.
In this program.
They're free
So-
to make whatever arrangement.
Yeah, and just a little more clarification for the residents, what this is that we got a request from the county treasurer to where they, where currently, if someone is in foreclosure or is not paid their property taxes to the city, that gets referred over to the county. And so the county's had programs for several years to try to keep people in their homes, put them on a payment plan with an interest rate, to give them more time to get caught up, so to avoid, the county processing the foreclosure. What they came to us with was a earlier tier where if someone met a poverty exemption, that they could get some relief on the tax bill itself. And what we'd asked Terry to calculate is find our lowest, taxable value property and what type of benefit would this give them compared to the poverty exemption we already have in place and we've had for several years. And basically our deal is better, in terms of for those residents that would qualify. And I also trust Terry and her staff much more to be diligent to make sure that people really do qualify, that it isn't a legit exemption that's being offered, and following up every year to make sure the circumstances has not changed, so that they can continue to get that benefit. So that's why I would not be in favor of this, because we already have a program that I'd rather the residents that qualify come into the city program that is available today, and that's through our city assessor's office, Terry Sosha. And then basically you would be paying just 3% of what your available income is for the property tax versus, 10% of the taxable value. And like I said, in the, lowest taxable value property we have, that is still better than what the county is going to be offering. And so that's the reason why we don't really need to join this tier one program of pays that the county treasurer is putting out there.
Can't do both, right?
There's no reason to, because we don't want someone to go into foreclosure and get handed over to the county and then try to go through it.
Right.
It's better for them to come forward early.
There you go.
And so we want to have that encouragement.
And just, again, to reiterate with Mr. Karen, I mean, we already have a program, so we're here to help. We're not shutting out people who have
Exactly.
issues, so as we want to use our program here, and we believe it's a better program. So we're here to assist, so I think I just want to make sure that, and I know you already pointed that out, and it's important, but Mr. Asia.
Yeah, plus, Mr. Karen, they have that STEP program where it brings them up to speed with, so that's a better program. It brings them up, get everything paid, then they start fresh.
Right.
So it's,
Well-
I thought that was a better program than this. It gets them moving forward.
And one additional thing, just to add maybe some encouragement for the
And the
county.
loan is forgiven after 5
Right.
years.
Maybe some encouragement for the county is that the next tier level, it's like if you do end up in that situation, you're in their, what they can now call their tier two, still a 6% interest rate, which is fairly high compared to what interest rates are. And so maybe they ought to look at, they want it to be more of a benefit. Cost of management and payment program's not that much, so I think that's something that the county could be looking at to better benefit those in need if they get to that point, versus the PAYS program they have.
I agree.
So it was moved by Mr. Vitale, supported by Mr. Karen to deny that we enter into the program. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? 6-0, thank you. I will move to Mr. Karen. First one is the Great Lakes Turf LLC through the golf course fertilizer and chemicals
Yeah, so
section.
in terms of the blanket purchase order for is certain fertilizer that's being purchased by the golf course. Basically, when I went through just searching minutes, found the last time this is actually up for us to be approved as a contract, went back to fiscal year 2013, or the meeting was July 2nd, 2012. And I believe Mr. Koppler, you did some additional conversations today, and basically his question whether we even had this as an approved contract to begin with for this amount.
Right, in talking with Parks and Recreation Director, this was not bid out since at least 2009, I believe, correct? You want to come up to that?
This contract or commodity we bid out, we don't bid it out, it is a sole source. The chemical that we use is specifically designed for the greens. And what MSU does is they actually set up a testing area where they have so many different areas set up where people go out and grade these areas with the certain chemicals. Well, dating back to 2009, this chemical was improving throughout the years. Give you an idea, it's starting out, we're right now in 2019, it was, the fluorine compared to others was like an 8.1 out of, I believe, a 10-point scale. And then the next one below, which is a Daconil plus a signature, which a signature is a fungicide of some sort, so the grass doesn't, attracts this, so it's a 6.2. So what ends up happening is this chemical actually is causing us a reduction of using other chemicals and providing us some very good greens at the same
Okay.
time.
And so basically, my question really is more around purchasing policies of, anything that's over $10,000 requires things to go out for bid and council to approve the contracts, and we approve them for 3-5 years. This was not approved as indefinite back then. And it's just been rolling, and actually, I don't even know if we've had it through as a purchase order before. And that's gone that many years that it's not been caught. So I guess, Matt, just what is the correction method forward, for this in terms of?
I think if you look at it from that concept of a sole source, I think the right way to go would be to get a multi-year contract with them and understanding it's not being bid out. So it's kind of like, if you look at the way that we handled the floating docks just a little bit ago. Again, over 10,000, should have bid that out, but because of the exigent circumstance that we need to get this done quickly, we brought quotes instead of that. You effectively waived that bidding requirement and allowed what we brought forward from a purchasing standpoint to be approved. And so I think that would be very similar to that, so.
You think you can do that since next meeting's in, 5 weeks from now? You think within 5 weeks you can have that documentation available to do an official award?
I
the
don't
next
think,
meeting?
yeah, I don't think we can do the bidding part of it, but I think we can get some quotes on some of the other products, show why this product is the better source for that would give you maybe a little bit more comfort in terms of awarding a contract for, 1 to 3 years, however you want to handle that.
Okay.
Table?
Yeah. So I move the table the purchase order to the next meeting?
I'm sorry, who did that one? Who seconded it? You did, okay. Moved by Mr. Karen, supported by Mr. Vitale to table that for the July 20th meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? And then, thank you. And then the ordinance books for the municipal code, right?
Yep. So just in terms of the main question here is that we do have the public, 8,000 associated with the publication of the books and only 1,500 towards the website maintenance. So I guess, Mary, the question there is, in looking at the website itself, there is still a large section of pending ordinances that are kind of being held as a separate document. They're not as part of the whole body of the ordinances. Is there something in terms of an extra fee we need to be paying on a more regular basis, or is that just them being behind?
It's not them being behind, it's because we're in the middle of recodification. And so while the recodification process is going, they can't keep updating that because when they redo the book, it won't all be in place. And that was part of the agreement we signed a year and a half ago on the recodification.
Okay.
That's working its way through. That's why we're posting them to the website separately, and that's why it says so, that everything since that when we started the recodification process was not moved into the sections of the book.
Okay.
That was part of that process.
All right. So then where are we at with the recodification process, Mr. Erie?
Continuing, it's a pretty big job. And basically, it's reviewing all of their work against state law, and we're close. I think we have our final meeting set up in 3 or 4 weeks.
Okay. All right. So move to approve.
Moved by Mr. Karen,
Support.
supported by Mr. Frederick. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, 6-0. Thank you. Updates and follow-ups. Mr. Karen, Mr. Koppler. I was looking that way, and your head got in the
I will
way.
yield my time to Mr. Karen for any updates. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Kind of going over from the last council meeting.
Did you want
Turn
Laura?
that back? Because I said you have to do it in a couple minutes.
Okay.
Going over from the previous council meeting, we did advertising out for the vacant council seat. I think I checked earlier today, as of yet, we haven't received any applications back in. The service line replacement program, we are looking actually to get that restarted sometime probably late in June to early July. I still don't have a final time frame on that, but in meeting with our engineers as well as our water department, we're pushing to try to get those started again, so we can get the work that we've budgeted to be done started. The splash pads pool, actually, Mr. Bowman just left. We would get this, but we are working with the county to get those both open. My understanding, the splash pad is going to be the thing that we open them first, because that just requires the approval from the county health department. The pool, there are a couple moving pieces.
Okay, let me go back to the splash pad, because that's first, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've seen the weather.
Yes, yeah, we're trying.
So tell Mr. Bowman we need to open that splash pad.
Yep. And again, the holdup is getting the county to come out and do the inspection. So we're pushing to try to get that. When I spoke to him last week about this, he hadn't gotten a date yet, but we're trying for this week.
Is it the state or the county?
County.
Health
County
Department?
So
Yeah.
what happens when they say they can't get here? They're the ones that cause the whole mess. So then our residents will have to suffer 90 degrees and can't come to a splash pad, so they can just stamp it and say the water's okay?
Well, let's hope that we don't have to cross that bridge. So we'll work very diligently to get that done.
Okay.
I will keep you informed. The pool, we have to do a little bit of cleaning still. The company's coming in this week to do that. I know that originally, Mr. Bowman was thinking July 1st on that. Again, we're trying to push that to get it open as quickly as possible before July 1st.
Let's go back to the splash pad. So because it's going to be 90, I've been down
It's
this
gonna be
path.
90 this week, yep.
I've been down this path for years before. We don't open it, and it's 90 degrees, and you know what? All of us up here are going to get the calls. Who tests all that? Do we test it, and they stamp it? Tell me how it works.
So they will come out, they'll make sure that all the systems are operational. They'll take a sample of the water to make sure it has the proper clarification. And then if it's good, they sign off on the operational permit.
Do they do that same day?
Generally, I believe they do. I mean, again, I haven't
testing kit,
experienced
basically.
it here, and yeah, I mean, they do the test right on site.
Oh,
They
yeah,
don't have
it's
to
easy.
take it to any lab or anything. So, yeah.
Stick it in there, stick a little thing.
It happens
It's
very
nothing.
quickly.
So can we
I
call?
mean, really, the only thing is they just want to make sure you don't have too high a level of chlorine or too low a level. It just has to be right in the wheelhouse
Right.
there, so.
And we probably have the tester anyways, and we're testing it probably consistently throughout I would think we would be testing throughout the season as we want to see. We don't want it too high level, we want to be pouring this on people,
We're
so
required to
we're
do the
constantly
tests on a
testing
daily
it.
basis,
And they could be here, they could be there 15 minutes.
If that long, yes.
I mean, we got two county commissioners.
I mean-
Right. Can we call
Yeah,
our commissioners?
You can, but I mean, there's no question they're behind. I get that, so we're all going to suffer because they decided that they're not going to do it, and then the whole thing here. And it's a minimal test.
What's the
yes.
downside risk of opening?
That's probably a fine. I don't know.
$500.
25 bucks? Hey.
Probably
It's
warning
probably not
first.
25 bucks.
Mr. Erie, do you know?
But
Should be a misdemeanor, $500.
I don't know.
We
Might
are-
fall back to me if it's a misdemeanor. I'm not sure we like that.
Why don't we take a picture of our pH test, post it on Facebook, and call it a day?
Okay, I'll stop.
I
I'll
appreciate-
stop, but I think you have an idea where we're sitting, and let us know pretty soon here, because we've got people who want to enjoy that, and it
Again,
is going to be hot.
When we spoke last week, the priority was to get it open this week. So we will find out again tomorrow morning what that schedule looks like.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
No.
But we've been
Right
down
away.
this path.
Yes.
We've
Understood. Very frustrating, this whole mess. Just trying to go through this real quick to end it. I think really, the last one I'll comment on is about the reopening of restaurants and getting them through the process for the outdoor seating.
Yes, or tents or whatever, right?
Yeah,
That's
whatever-
what you're referring to.
whatever-
Using their parking lot.
Correct. Staff has committed to a 2-day turnaround time. So our internal purposes, processes, from when the application comes in to us getting our approvals done are within 2 days. The issues that I think we're seeing right now really is those that want to serve alcohol in those areas, they have to get the state approval as well. And talking with Councilman Frederick a little bit earlier, he was saying the state's approving those at about 43 a day. And so depending where they fall into it, where we may have our processes done, if we do have to, get those liquor permits as the final step, that's what's going to hold them up, unfortunately.
I talked actually to the individual who owns Butter Run, right? Because he's blocked that parking lot already and put sand down there, and I don't know, 6x8s or something, right? Put picnic tables, and at this point, he's being held up by the state.
Gilbert's too.
Gilbert's too, okay, there's right? So, we just don't want to be the cog. I know we're not, I just, I think we
Yeah,
all-
no, and, you know, I have to commend Mr. Ray's and his staff.
Very
You know,
good.
They found a very good solution to the problem that was presented. And, you know, they're doing everything they can to get it through the process. Police department, fire department have also, you know, made sure that if they have any reviews, that within that 48-hour timeframe, they're going to get it done. So,
Okay,
but we'll see how that works out.
great.
The last thing I had was I wanted to give a quick update on Veterans Memorial Beach. If I can do this here.
Just crane your neck a little bit more.
I am doing this, I'm holding the button in so I can talk.
You're amazing.
It's like, I don't know, I have to shift hands here. Oh, now we have an internal security alert, so we'll just get rid of that, hopefully. Okay. So this regards the erosion issues that we're having at the beach and also at the park as well. But if you haven't been out there recently, this is actually a few weeks old, and I was out there this weekend and looked at it, and so it's probably another 2 foot closer to that roadway than what this.
It didn't
picture
have
was.
2 feet before.
It's very close. And so this is one of the major, and just let me give you kind of the look the other way. So this is towards the main park then. You can see that, again, there's quite a bit of erosion happening there. And when this picture was taken, you can't really see it, but there is a bench that's used to be located right there. And it was probably inches away from going over the and so there's really two different issues that we have at the park. One is at the beach with that erosion, and then the second is actually where the park has been armored further to the south. We have some erosion issues there, which I have towards the end of the slideshow, so you can see that. So this, when we met with our engineers, HRC, to start talking about what the different options were with it. They presented to us, and we'll kind of get to this here, and I want to show this. So this is actually 1999, what the beach looked like. And you can see that the beach actually, here is the seawall point there, and this is the one point that you can see, if we go back. Oh my God. Right there, that point is right there. So you can see the beach almost comes out to that point there. And I'm going to take a guess that back in 1999, you probably also didn't have a lot of issues with the ability to use the beach because of the water condition. Because you had, it mainly, the beach went all the way out into the main lake. And one of the issues that we have is, right, you don't have that.
It was also very low water at that time, too.
Yeah,
Like
very
that
low.
period, 99, 2000, 2001 was
Right.
a lot of dredging going on, so.
And so this was from last year, 2019, and you can see that there's approximately about 90-foot difference between where that beach was in 1999 and where it was in 2019. And of course, it's even closer here now because of the erosion that's happening with the storms. So needless to say, we have a number of issues going on that are very important if we want to save the beach, save the road, and eventually save the park. And so in working with HRC, they came up with some concepts that would, again, in total, save the beach and allow it to be used again in the future. Now, what this doesn't do, unfortunately, is address the water quality issues. So the way that this would be done, we would get it a little bit further out, but we still wouldn't get it into the main lake where you'd get the circulation that would improve those water quality. So we would still, even though we'd have more of a beach and it would be saved, we're still going to have those periods of time when we're not going to be able to use the beach because of the water quality. But under this concept, we actually are going to have a more protected beach area that we could block off the access to the water beach because we would have right here a seawall. And what they were proposing was a ledge rock seawall that would, again, create a landside beach, and then to the east of that ledge of rock would be a water beach. And under the current conditions with the water level, that would be right now up against the ledge rock, but as the water went down, you would actually get more of a beach area. But again, the problem is you're not getting the water quality circulations. So in just the construction side of this alone, we're talking approximately $500,000. So there's not going to be any cheap solutions here. Let me just start this out from the very beginning. It's going to cost some money to do that. The downside to all these is that Eagle has told us that it's going to require a general permit. So we know that whatever we do, we're going to get into 2 to 3 months of approval process before we'll be able actually to do construction. And leading up to that, we're going to have to do the design and all that. At the same time that we were talking about this, Mr. Bowman actually received an email from Eagle. Switch my fingers here because I'm losing feeling to my thumb. And they were touting that the US EPA has reached out to Eagle to look at restoration as well as water quality beach programs. Apparently every year, US EPA puts money aside from their clean water funding to do restorations of beaches that also improve the water quality. And in talking with Eagle, I asked, where, what engineering firm would you recommend if you could recommend an engineering firm to do this? And they actually recommended to me ETC, and it's a company that we've used before. And so I made the call to the representative from there, Annette DeMaria, and she came out very quickly. She was already familiar with the issues at the beach and felt that we had a really good project here, not only for the restoration piece, but also fixing the water quality. And the two pieces, I guess, where we're at today is that if we just stick with HRC, we could probably move a little bit, we could move quicker to get them engaged, but I don't know necessarily if they're going to be the best firm to do this project. And so we did solicit a quote from ETC to work with us to do this. And the thing that I liked best about, well, two things I liked best about ETC. One was they were very, very quickly, they gave us what we asked for. And I think that's very important in a project like this because we don't have a lot of time, knowing that we're going to be spending a lot of time with Eagle to get these things approved. The second thing I really liked is they came up with an interim solution to the erosion problem. Because again, I don't know necessarily if we have 4 to 6 months to save this. And so what they kind of came up with was a solution that we wouldn't be spending money that we would just lose as part of the final project to do the restoration and water quality. And so I think there's a lot of value in going with them. Now, their quote to handle this task is about $21,000. It's something that, again, I didn't feel comfortable moving too far ahead without at least having this conversation with you to see if you're willing to allow us to go with a different engineering firm to work with us on this. And second, if you're kind of in line with moving fairly rapidly to get this taken care of. Now, let me just address another piece, which is the US EPA's money. I've been playing phone tag with the representative from the US EPA because I wanted to get one question answered. Now, what I'm being told by ETC as well as Eagle, that the money that if we did have a qualifying project and received a grant from US EPA, it wouldn't require us to open up the beaches to anybody other than the residents. They're saying that their money can be spent effectively on a private beach. I wanted to get something in writing from US EPA to that effect, because I'd rather not have that surprise that, oh, by the way, now that you accepted our $1 million+ you have to open it up. So that's another angle that I'm working on right now to get in writing before we proceed on that. but I think the work that we need to get done on the beach is to get the interim erosion protection in place. And it really is going to end up being probably us dumping a lot of rocks, armoring in advance of where the area is right now. And the thought is that that material would then be used to be pushed out to where we'd create the base for the ledge rock, ultimately for the new beach. So I guess that's where I'm at, is wanting to find out if you're agreeable to moving forward so I can get all these things in place so you can finalize this at an upcoming meeting.
Mr. Vitale?
I'm agreeable on the contracting. The question I have is you just moved past the die.
I forgot I had one more slide, and this is the armoring along the more, on the southern part. The water, because of the height, has been getting up behind the riprap and is pushing it down. And so we're starting, as you can see here in this area, the land is starting to sink into the lake. And so this is actually another phase that we'd be talking about. There's a possibility, and we're still looking into this, that we wouldn't have to get a permit to take care of this because of where the water line is. But we haven't finalized that we can, in fact, go out there and just pull that rock back, put some materials down, fabric down, then pull the rock back on top of it to protect it. So we're still working on that.
And we don't, those happen to be my shoes, when we were there, even the cement where the steps were, I mean, that's roaded underneath. I mean, it's bad even further south as you go down there.
Yeah, there's a number of different issues. Some we have more ability to work on without having to worry about Eagle. But this one, again, was kind of up in the air. Some saying we needed Eagle, some engineers saying we didn't need Eagle. So we're just trying to get something to validate that we can perform that maintenance without getting into trouble, because that could easily be done by taking equipment out there and, again, putting fabric down and pulling the rock back up from the lake and take care of that.
More, Mr. Vitale?
Yeah, well, just one general comment. What a shame it is that we can't recycle all the broken concrete that we have, and that we have to use scenic rocks that really drive the price of this up. I would like to recycle and save the earth.
Well, let me just say that that's a possibility, that we might be able to use concrete that we're pulling up from roads as that armoring for the first phase of protection. So we're still, again, that's something that we talked about using.
I won't say anything more about it. Good luck. The diagram that you have up on the screen there, that's not the plan that would improve water quality? We don't have a conceptual what would be done for that.
So what we would be doing effectively is rebuilding the beach out to here. So at some point in here, very similar, I guess, to the plan that HRC was talking about, we would probably build that ledge from there, so from the corner of the seawall to a point over here somewhere, probably tie it into where the armoring is supposed to be. And that would be the ledge rock there. And then we could then also build a little bit more out to it that would get us, again, out to this 1999.
I really like that we're finally talking about that. I mean, to me, it's imperative we keep an EPA that's interested in restoring things, not just letting them naturally erode to nothing. So, okay, great. And I'm okay with the contract for $21,000.
Ms. Rusi?
Yep, I'll just echo Councilman Vitale's points. We need to do something about the erosion if we can improve water quality. That's been a goal for a long, long time. So, we can do the necessary infrastructure work, save the beach, save the, park, and fix an ongoing issue. That would be wonderful. And something we've been talking about for a long time in terms of going with a different company other than HRC. This is specialized work. We need to find the best in the business who's capable of designing and overseeing this type of thing. We'd be paying HRC anyway. So I think finding the best to do this very specialized work and advise us, guide us, and oversee this, I mean, that's our responsibility to do that. It'd be irresponsible not to. So I'm all in favor of pursuing another company if, in the experts' minds, in your minds, that's what we need. I think that's what we need.
Yeah, and I really believe, working with ETC, that we're actually going to save money when all is said and done.
Yeah, I mean, if there's, experts more specialized in doing this, they know what to do already, and they can hit the ground running a little bit more than a company that may not have this level of experience here. So, okay, thank you.
Mr. Karen?
I guess my concern with ETC is that they're the company that designed the green structure at Kite Monroe.
I knew he was going to say that.
And, and I've worked with them in the past in terms of when, in terms of the PCB project, because they were kind of a consultant on that, but I guess all my experience has been with them on, in that realm was them being in meetings, trying to provide their expertise as we were negotiating with the EPA about what they're gonna do. Didn't really feel like it helped a lot in terms of, it was a matter of just getting the right people from what back then was DEQ and getting the right people with the EPA on the project that really got the PCB thing moving. And the fact that, so being that it is really basically a civil engineering project versus an environmental consultant project, I guess I'm not seeing their credentials for that. I probably agree, they're available, they could probably go faster, they've dealt with Eglon permits like this before probably with environmental stuff, but this is more of a bigger civil engineering project, so I'm not sure they have that expertise.
Well, based upon, again, when talking with Eagle on restoration and water quality projects, that's who that they thought would be the best engineering firm to work with on. They have done, I think, 3.
You give me other examples of what they've actually done, and
I can definitely do that.
And talk to those local officials of what their experience was.
Yep.
Okay.
We'll definitely do that.
Mr. Asia?
Yeah, no, I'm all for it, the construction end of it. It's simple, really, I can't believe they didn't come up with it sooner, but it'll be a great, enhancement. Finally get a beach back.
Mr. Frederick?
During low water. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, during low water. John, the good news here is there's no plants involved in this one, so.
Well, if I could, one of the goals is actually to provide beach area even when the water is up high and if the water quality isn't, for some reason good. So.
You're going to put
urban beach concept.
So let me, first of all, I'm all in, because if we lose the sidewalk or the road, the next thing is the restrooms, right? So we got to do something because
there's building anymore over there.
Yeah, exactly. Pete's all done with the restrooms. So the way you mentioned, you said these would be tiered. So how many tiers do we think, or are we too soon?
It would only be 2 tiers. So it'll be the main beach area, what I call the protected beach area, and then you would have access down to the waterfront beach. So it's the waterside beach, and that would be the only other tier.
Okay. So I mean, from the environmental standpoint, the biggest problem is the water flow around that corner, and we kind of block it. So the farther out we can go, the better it is. In my opinion, I'm not that engineer, but it's pretty simple. That's why it's a mess.
Yeah, I think the concept in talking with the representatives from ETC is to get the beach as far out into the lake that we permissibly can. So it could even be greater than what that 1999 shows. But there'd be a lot of work, and I think that's where the water quality piece of this becomes important, because we're looking to solve that issue, which would kind of dictate that we get into the main lake as much as possible. So that's kind of the hook to solve that problem.
We need to go back when that was a Masonic temple and see if we can get some pictures of what that looked like, because it was a lot straighter from pictures that I've seen. The library's got them, so I would, call Rosemary, see if she can dig some of those up. That might give us a little bit of ammunition to go farther out in the lake. I'm hoping that that we can get this done soon because, or, I mean, worst case, we may have to put, and I guess here's the question. Can we put that riprap on the beach that we're eventually going to use underneath without talking to Eggle? Because it's not really in the lake, it's on the beach.
No.
That's a no.
Yes, no.
Why? Because it
we-
could touch it in some way, or?
We tried. I mean,
Yeah.
we tried.
Or should we?
They said no.
2 letters.
N-O.
Yes.
Okay.
Or should we be
I mean-
sandbagging that corner where it's protruding the most and while we get the rest of this figured out?
It's probably,
Yeah.
Sandbag berm at that one end where it's getting closest to the path.
it's probably, yeah, it's a good
And
idea.
how is our height right there compared to the Salvaggio lot next door?
So this is
we
all
It's
below
less flooded.
that there.
This going
Actually,
back.
this, what,
Yeah, I know it was.
what ultimately we're going to be doing will provide additional protection to his
sure.
property.
Yeah.
But at this point, from our review of our land, we're not causing any of the issue that, he's experiencing.
All right, but I like John's idea. We should
Let's just
sandbag.
build up a sandbag berm at the one end, just protect
Yeah.
it for now.
All right. Thanks, Matt.
Good
Appreciate it.
thinking. And then, I got a couple, you're good, Matt? I got a couple of, I'm sorry, I probably missed it. You said City Hall was open and you gave hours, we're all,
I did not, I didn't get to that.
Oh.
City Hall is open, though. We are right now open at 8:30 a.m. to 4:30.
Parks and Rec's open Monday through Friday, 9 to 7, Saturday, 9 to 2, DPW, 7 a.m. to 3:30, Library, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5.
That is correct.
Right, so we're open. Were you gonna do this under city manager's report, or, I mean,
Nope, go right ahead.
no, you go ahead, you.
I didn't have that in front of me, so.
Oh.
Go right ahead.
Okay, so we're open, you gotta wear face masks, and we got plexiglass, right? We're doing extra cleaning. You can jump in now.
So we, if you walk through there, you see that here in City Hall, as well as most of our buildings, we've put up the spit shields, the plexiglass to protect it. The employees and the residents as well.
I think sneeze guards are the appropriate term.
Spit shield.
I'm from Ohio, we call those spit shields. But we also have the appropriate social distancing marks on the floor, so people know where to stand, and different guides. Again, everything that we did is in compliance with what the governor's orders for opening up businesses in the state of Michigan, so we fully comply with that. Additional cleaning is happening in all the high contact areas. Staff has the appropriate PPE. There's a lot going on.
Yep.
But it's all in line with what the state is requiring.
I appreciate it, you've been on top of it, so, Mr. Vitale, you have a
Oh,
question?
I was just going to compliment the public restrooms. Thanks for not ruining the Formica and using C-clamps. Just observed that.
Mr. Koppler and staff have been on it, so I appreciate that. Again, a couple more. Mr. Reyes, we got Wild Bill's going, right? So that whole little corner, whether it's Kroger, although the gas station seems a little slow, but we got Kroger moving, Wild Bill's ripping up the parking lot, which they agreed to, so that's positive out there. So we hope to see that. There's nothing on 11 Mile and Harper. We need those lanes fixed, the islands, the curbs.
We have the permit now from Macomb County for
Okay.
11 and Harper, and that work is going to be starting this week.
Okay.
Nice.
While you're there, pump station at Blue Goose, well, not at Blue Goose, I say Blue Goose, but it's
Across
at,
from the Lakeshore Senior Living.
yes.
My understanding is they started driving some piles there to shut off some of the water that we're getting back in from the lake from an old abandoned line. And so we have an update meeting tomorrow, but they've started with what needs to be done to order the parts and get going on that.
And then the Blossom Heath and the whole bathhouse there, we're getting closer. We've, I think, got some tables in there. We've got some chairs. We actually put the gas line in for the future. I think we got a ping pong. We got some tables. I think we're still waiting on cameras, right? We're still doing a little more landscaping. We're adding a piece of concrete so the two, like the walking tracks, touch each other, or not the walking track, but each.
The sidewalks connect each other.
Right, they didn't
yes.
connect, so we got to make sure they connect. We got more, if you go, we got more tables coming. They're on order, obviously, for COVID. We were delayed in getting all that.
There's about 10 out there already, right?
Okay, but more's coming. We got some from upstairs, some on the inside.
We got a handful of the Adirondack chairs, and the rest of them are coming mid-July, from what I understand
Yep.
from Mr. Bowman.
So, I mean, we'd hope to have it all done, but it's coming, so, but bathrooms are all open, so that's just, I mean, that's just fantastic. So we have that. I already got compliments on that, so it's coming along. I just wanted to make sure everyone knew it. It's still probably, by the time we get everything, could be 30 days before we get every table in here, but we're working on it.
So do we have a date for cutting a ribbon up there?
I don't think we do at this, no, I don't think we do at this point, but I'll try to send something out.
Okay.
And then, just the last item, and Mr. Koppler can jump into, I thought it was important that we make a couple of comments, obviously, in light of the current events that are nationwide, that are happening. First off, the city of St. Clair Shores, I think we all know, got a great long history of great people in this community, great residents who participate, who love the community, volunteer. A number of years ago, actually, we put a boards and commissions together. My gosh, it might be 15 years ago and we have a board now that looks at different people who have the right feelings for certain boards. So we bring people onto these boards and commissions to do all kinds of different things. So we try to get the right people. And again, this community is just a fantastic place to live because of the people in this community. So I wanted to first say that. On behalf of what we do, I think, as a city, because we have been evaluating what we do and how we do it, and working with staff, and I can't commend them enough, and leading with Mr. Koppler. But we have reviewed all the protocols for hiring. We've got a new software system that makes sure that our postings cover all kinds of sites, at least 20 different job sites. And again, we're always evaluating our hiring protocols. We think that's important so that we get the best people, and everyone knows that we have opportunities here in St. Clair Shores. Couple comments regarding the police department. I think you saw, or if you didn't see, the Michigan Senate passed Bill 945. I think it was unanimous vote. I think it was on implicit bias and de-escalation of the police department. And I'd like to report that at this point, the police department already meets those standards. I think that's fantastic. So we already met those standards that they, being the Michigan State, put in place under 945. The city manager, the police chief, review arrest records, use of force records, resident complaints. They work together to review that. The chief of police reviews with the command staff those types of reports. So they have been doing that. So they're evaluating that. I will also say that the police chief has reached out a number of times, now specifically, to enhance dialogue between minority residents. He's meeting with the Coalition of Racial Equality. So the chief has a good relationship with a number of the individuals who have been part of those associations. Does a fantastic job. And then I think just an action that I'm taking here is that this body has always met on Martin Luther King Day. We're going to move that next year in 2021 to Tuesday. So we won't have a council meeting on Martin Luther King Day. We will move that to the Tuesday. And I know Mr. Koppler, the city manager, is working with the unions regarding observing that holiday, but that's something that has been negotiated over the years, so Mr. Koppler will work with them on that. But I thought it was important that we kind of highlight some of those steps that we have taken or even actually have taken before. And I think it was a long, realized, but very important updates and follow-ups, so sorry about all that. With that, we will go to comments by individual council people. We'll start with Mr. Asha.
Oh, gosh. All right, thank you. Let's see. First of all, since we have the cold patch that we just awarded, there's a hole on 10 Mile in Jefferson. As you're making a left onto Jefferson from 10, it's right there. I get this lady calling me. a resident about it. And another, I'm getting calls about some of the residents are going into some, it's not so much the restaurants, the bars, where they're packing them in, and there's got to be a little social distancing or something, or a mask. They have to really do something. Who, is it the health department that is in charge of it, monitoring these businesses, or is it us? Because they seem to think it's us, and I don't think it is.
Yeah, I don't believe that the answer is the city of St. Clair Shores. I think the answer, at least the way that the state has portrayed it, is really the liquor control. That's who is responsible for making sure that they follow those particular.
So they should
guidelines.
call the health department or liquor control to make sure they're, because they, you know, I went and looked, and it's true, you know, but I can't blame them, you know. You gotta have Budweiser once in a while. But that's really about it. As long as, if they have a problem, they can call them, I guess. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Rusi?
Thank you. Just two quick things. First off, just piggybacking on some of the comments that were made tonight. I just want to thank Matt and the staff and all of the administration for your work and proactiveness over the past few months with dealing with all the uncertainty, getting business done in new ways, given all the challenges, getting things open, getting things safe, and starting to creep towards some normal operations. But thank you for all the work you guys have done and continue to do, from Parks and Recreation, the general government, even CDI working with the restaurants to try to introduce some temporary outdoor seating to help with the capacity issues. So thanks for all your efforts, and every staff member and other members of administration. It's definitely appreciated and noticed. And thanks also to every time I get an issue from a resident via Facebook or text or phone calls or emails, you're always right on top of it. Sometimes same day getting a solution for the residents who have these questions or concerns. So thanks for your responsiveness. I have a few more I'll be sending you tonight probably. So just a heads up. And lastly, it was mentioned tonight, we do have the application that we had approved at the last meeting, the process in place to find a new colleague to fill out Councilman Rubino's remaining term. I would encourage you to apply if you love St. Clair Shores, you love helping, you like being involved, you love homework, we get that, and you like, especially tonight, we got a lot, you like solving problems. If you have the time, make sure you have the time, the energy, the desire, look at the application we have online, because this is, it's a really fulfilling job. You know, it really feels good to be able to make a difference. Sometimes you're dealing with a resident who has an issue and it's aggrieved them for quite some time and they think no one can help them. And they reach out to you, or you just pick it up on Facebook because they're just complaining about, because they think no one will listen, and you can be a part of helping change their life in a positive way with just a couple of emails or a phone call or something. And it's a really nice feeling to be able to do that, to have a say and ask the questions and work together with your colleagues to come up with, you know, everyone's expertise, everyone's backgrounds, everyone's profession and different viewpoints, and all work together to come up with the best solution for the city, all our 60,000 residents. We all work together, hopefully 7 people, to bring about the best possible things, proposals and everything we vote on. So I would encourage you, if you're watching this, you're already one step ahead of the game, I guess, in that you're interested in city business and you're paying attention. So please consider putting an application. One vote can make a difference. We saw that tonight. And it's important to have a full board for the residents, for the business owners. So we have, again, those 7 different viewpoints coming together to make the one best decision, hopefully, for the city. And for the petitioners, too, who are entitled and deserve 7 potential votes on their petitions. So the application's online. It's not that difficult. It's questions, some general questions, just, you know, name, address, that kind of thing, and a resume. And you could be up here helping us, helping the city, helping the residents, representing people, and helping to make a difference in the community you live in. So definitely consider applying if you're interested. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Karen?
Thank you. First, I guess, question for Chris. The property on Helen, where we're using that as a help with one of the construction projects, what's going on there?
They have some materials stored there, and when they were doing the hydro excavating, they were dewatering the material they took out at the stop box to verify the service
Okay,
lead lines.
It was part of the replacing the lines on
California
California.
between Harper and Helen.
Okay, but what I also saw on the property, there were 3, looks like the top of catch basins were also sitting on the property?
There were some precast structures that were there.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are probably gate wells.
Oh, okay. But that's also for the water, that's just material storage for the water line project?
That's all for that, for Bidagary construction, for that first section.
Okay,
The other section, as long as you brought it up, between Helen, or Mack and Martyr will start Wednesday.
okay, cool, thank you. And then, Matt, any update on the plan for the green structure at Kite Monroe?
It's going to be out to you by the end of the week.
Okay. And just want to encourage all the members of the senior center, they're still doing the classes in the park, the exercise classes in the park, so feel free to contact the senior center to sign up for those. To be out there and stay active through the summer while we wait when we can safely open the center itself. Actually, question, I'm not sure if we have the answer to this, but question on baseball. I saw East Point Roseville was doing baseball sign up. I don't know if they have their own rec league, and I wasn't sure what our leagues were doing.
Lock St. Clair is.
Lock St.
St. Clair
Clair
is?
is
Okay.
open, and St. Clair Shores Baseball, they canceled, right, Ron? Yeah.
Well, they canceled, but they're rethinking it. They're not
Are they
sure.
rethinking it? Well, good.
Yeah, but Lock St. Clair is open and practicing.
Okay. And then, anything about our soccer leagues?
Well, no, but I mean, we anticipate them going, come later summer and then playing in the fall. Yes.
Fall
Okay.
season.
That's
All
what we
right.
anticipate.
And I think Mayor, kind of your remarks regarding police, one of the things in terms of watching the coverage, especially more of the local coverage, listening to local leaders, one thing that stands out of police departments that do have the respect of their communities, especially Chief Craig in Detroit, listening to him on several interviews, is that they really talk about it's the leadership of the department that matters the most. Just not to really float his ego, but Todd our police chief is a great leader and sets a great example for our department. And so I think it's great that we have him there and that he is working with all these groups to make his department better. And even on that note, I want to recognize Patrol Officer Himman. We got a email this weekend regarding there's a hit and run accident over on Gratiot in Roseville at 4:30 in the morning. And fortunately, this patrol officer was monitoring the scanner and had heard about the accident, got a very vague description of the car, basically black sedan, and because he was in the area, aware, saw a suspect vehicle with what looked like damage, pulled the person over.
Fresh damage.
In that fresh damage, yeah. Pulled the person over and apprehended the suspect with the help of Roseville there. So that's great alert police work by that officer. And that's just another great example of the officers that we have here in St. Clair Shores. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Frederick?
Thank you. One of the things as the businesses were closed, I think a lot of them took advantage of that time to do some work on their businesses. And I can tell you, I've seen a lot of, I said it like lots of striping going on, like striping their lots. Fishbones has done it, and I know Gilbert's did some more striping, and it's just making the city look better. So I want to thank the businesses for doing that, and hopefully anything we can do to help them out. Chris, I want to thank you and Liz. I know sometimes I call in a crazy panic, like, oh my God, need some help, and math calms me down occasionally. So, but I know you guys are working hard, and right now it seems like the state is holding us up, so we're putting calls into those folks as well. I also want to give us kudos for this back lot back here. If you haven't been there, any residents, the lot behind City Hall and the library is gorgeous. It's cement now. We were about to lose that lot because of the high water, and they've done a great job. They got a deeper bed in there, and it looks great. And by the way, they were emptying the pool today when I drove back there. And they had a bunch of pumps going, which I was hoping we could maybe hang on to in some way. We might need them, so. I already asked you about the ribbon cutting, and well, I'm sure we'll get that done this summer. The docks are underwater at the end, I'm not sure if we can do anything over at Blossom Heath. People are walking on their dock and it's got about an inch of water on it and getting in their boats and.
We're trying to add them here and there, so we are still working on it.
Okay. And I'm glad that you guys are doing the 2-day turnaround for the restaurants, especially the ones that don't serve liquor, who want to get that out there. And Chris, huge thank you. I know you put a lot of time in helping Maggie over at Wigs for Kids, and she had her final walkthrough today. She's got a little punch list, but I think she got a temporary C of O today, which means that she can now, because of the haircut thing and all of that, she'll be starting to see some kids tomorrow. So it's super important for that charity. They got their new building. It's gorgeous. Oh my God, we got to get all of us in there. It's just,
Yeah, I can't wait.
It's just the best that I've seen. And then, Mayor, one thing that maybe is coming up in your comments, but overnight parking goes back. You can't park from 3 to 5, right?
Yes, sir.
On your streets, so the police will be back out taking a look at that. So
Yep.
make sure that you know that and remember that, so that you're not calling one of us going, hey, I got a ticket, I thought the thing was
3 to 5, yep.
3 to 5, no parking on any street. And then last but not least, we do have some library announcements. For the next few weeks, the library hours of operation are, as the mayor said, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. Patrons are asked to wear a mask, stop at the sanitation station before entering the building, and utilize it. The library is practicing social distancing and has a capacity limit in the building, so you may have to wait in line if too many people come up, although the building's pretty big. Library materials can be returned through the book drop, which is open 24/7. All library returned materials are being quarantined for 72 hours before being processed and reshelved. And that's just because of the COVID. Internet computer use is by appointment only and limited to an hour-long session per patron per day. So patrons may call ahead to make a reservation. In fact, I'd recommend that. Curbside service is also available by appointment, so you visit the library's website at www.scslibrary.org or call the library for details, and that number's 586-771-9020. And then patrons are excited to be back in the building and to have access to library materials, and we're excited that we're going to be there to support that. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Vitale.
Okay, I'll start with something that Councilman Frederick raised, the issue of the parking in back. I actually have a friend who's travels here from Farmington Hills to use our facilities, and put a whole bunch actually called me on his ride down 696 to say, how impressed he is with our city and how good it looks that we've got new construction going on and we're making improvements, and he notices it. And he actually made a point to call me and tell me that, and of course, that makes you feel good. And I said, yeah, we're going to have electric charging stations too. I said, but we held out for a grant, so it ain't going to cost us any money. So a couple other things I want to touch on. An email went out from Liz, but just to kind of make residents aware, the apartment complex project that was planned on the old Gourmet House property appears to be shelved. Apparently the money just didn't work. And they do have a sign up there that says medical office building, but essentially they're just fishing. And they'd come before us for any approval on that. And I've got to say, there's no shortage of medical space in St. Clair Shores, so I do hope we get something a little more lively to bring a little more action down there than medical space. I mentioned a couple things throughout the city where we had leftover signs and construction materials and things like that, and I know some of those got cleaned up. I want to mention that there is still a road closed, or I don't remember what it says anymore because it's facing down and it's been run over, sign at the corner of Martin and Grant, along with the sandbags and angle iron and everything that's there. It's left over from Martin repaving. So there doesn't seem to be any action on that, and that could get picked up. Also, 10 and Harper, I think would be the northwest corner. There are just chunks of a leftover construction project, concrete. I don't know if that was, it's all around a pole on that corner, so I don't know if that was AT&T or DTE. That should probably get picked up. The 10 Mile Little Mac gas station, is there progress on that? That's a pile of broken concrete, which is not secured. I walked right in there, walked right up to it. So can we take another look at that and see if their permits ain't even good anymore and prod them along?
Pretty slow, don't you think, Mr. Reyes? That's pretty slow.
It is slow, and I did speak to them about a week ago, and they were supposed to be back there getting the project done. I haven't not seen action. You've not seen action. We did go cut the grass there.
Oh, my.
And he'll be getting a bill for that. That's what I know.
At what point, since it's not an active construction site, can we go and clean up their broken concrete and all the garbage that's strewn throughout the property and charge them for it?
I'll have to ask Mr. Erie that question. If it's secured and safe, I don't know if we can just go clean it up, so.
Well, there's a big enough gap in that fence that I walk through without touching anything, so.
Mr. Erie, can you investigate that? Thank you.
Let's see, what else do I have on here? The residential design language that we've had a subcommittee for, has that language been brought to Mr. Erie?
It was emailed to him, but I need to do a formal legal request, but he does have it.
Okay, good. Well, I don't know if you want to just hang out there, Chris. I had one more for you. Let's see how many times I can make you get up. Had a request for golf cart on Hughes, and I know that Hughes is a short street, but I think the request was for somebody that was handicapped. So, you know, might be a short street, but for them to traverse. Do we have a golf cart that we just normally use for these construction projects? If it's not in use, can we just put it there?
Normally, no. We've usually
Okay.
used them, like, it started on Bayview, when Bayview's 3/4 mile long, and there's no parking nearby, and they had to go across the street. That's when it started. And then Engelhart, last year, we had one in Visnall. Because of the length of those as well, how we ended up paving that, it was extremely long with that many cars being displaced. I did speak with Mr. Copper today. We're going to send out a notice. Those are all, and part of the challenge this year is we didn't have our usual resident meeting like we normally, because we couldn't.
Good point.
So we usually solicit the volunteers when we have the cart in use, so they can manage the cart itself. We don't give it to any one particular home.
Yeah.
But for different volunteers. So we're going to send out a notice, see if there's an interest, and if so, who would be interested in coordinating pickup and deliveries of folks with that cart. And if we can do that, then I'll get with the golf course to get a cart provided.
That's where it comes from, just one of the golf course carts?
And we've rented one in the past where, because there's such a, like on Engelhart and Visnall, we usually only have one project, not 2 or 3 projects with a cart, so we rented one last year.
All right, well, let's say let's evaluate that, make sure it comes back in the same condition we put it back out in, and I don't even know, are they allowed to ride in carts at the golf course yet?
Yes, they are.
They're divided though, right?
Yeah, as long as.
Not
that-
anymore, they're not
yeah,
divided.
yeah.
Oh, okay,
It
whoop-de-doo.
lasted one day.
I don't think it lasted one day, but we'll continue.
Okay. I did get a phone call from a resident, and I wasn't able to answer because I was in the middle of something else earlier tonight. I have a feeling he may have been trying to get me to talk about VFW car show. No?
I want to know
Okay.
if you can sit here at the meeting.
Oh, okay, well, yes. You've got 5 minutes to get down here. Okay. Okay, well, I guess on my own, I bring this up. Last time I spoke to anyone about VFW Friday night car shows was that they were going to do it, and they were going to do it with social distancing and maybe use the cement parking lot. All I can tell you is I haven't been in touch with them officially. I guess I should have tried to call. But if you're local and take a ride down to Martin and Jefferson, and if it's going on, it's going on. It'll be Friday night. That said, I actually did prepare maybe some longer comments on the issue of policing. And that is because I did receive a phone call earlier in the week asking that we join the Defund the Police effort. And my peers on council tonight have spoken to the issue of police misconduct. And as an elected official, you deserve to know my feelings on the issue. So put a tape in the VCR, start the DVR, because I'm going to talk about that. There can be no denial that police actions in the case of George Floyd were criminal and, more shockingly, inhuman and depraved. If an argument is made that he was no angel, that argument is irrelevant because it's after the fact. That said, when I say the names of Daniel Shaver, Tony Timpa, 6-year-old Jeremy Meredith, Dawn Ray Nelson, shot through the chest while her child sat behind her in the car, those names probably don't strike you as familiar. We'll search those names, and I could list many more, and tell me if it's the discussion that should only focus on race. Stereotyping, prejudice, bias, and profiling all involve casting judgment on a group of people, painting them all with a broad brush. If we make those judgments about our police officers, are we not doing the very same thing? Is this a cop versus civilian, black versus white? Are some of us being manipulated to hate? One thing about hate and violence is good for ratings and clicks. The revolution, in fact, will be televised and streamed and uploaded. So let me tell you something about this city's police department. Under the leadership of our current chief, it is always run below the budgeted staffing numbers. Why? Because our chief refuses to hire patrolmen who simply meet a minimum standard. More than once, when we've gone into a closed session and turned off these cameras, our chief of police has been critical that not only do we have low numbers to choose from, but often poor qualities of candidates for the job. In fact, your council, with my full support, offers premium benefits to make this a competitive employer. In other words, rather than staff up, Chief Woodcox prefers to run lean with officers in whom he has confidence. Long before George Floyd was a household name, he's told us of the efforts he's made to reach out to minority applicants. And one problem is that under the leadership of James Craig, the Detroit Police Department is no longer a revolving door of training to suburban career. And the good work of James Craig is evident that despite the best efforts of some from outside the city to provoke a riot by throwing bottles and bricks, it appears that Detroit will be a model in things done right. If there is a minority involved here, it's bad cops. The effort to remove them, like bad employees from many professions, should begin with union reforms. Something else I can tell you from a closed session experience with the previous police chief is one of our biggest obstacles to reform. As much as I've said this shouldn't be about race, I do want to talk about a form of white privilege that I believe exists. And that is, I can walk down the street and no one will attempt to guess my political views. As a white man, my politics could range anywhere from neo-Nazi right back full circle to full-on socialist. And that's very empowering. I don't have to feel like I'm selling anyone out. I'll never be called an Uncle Tom because I'm not buying into some media-driven rage. The exact opposite of that might be called black disadvantage. That is a belief that every person of color thinks exactly the same way, that prejudice and classism don't exist within a minority community, that their race is always the center of their consciousness, that they are monolithic in their thought. But essentially, to be an inferior race, an entire population would have to be incapable of doing something the same species is capable of doing. A chicken and eagle are both birds, but an eagle is superior. For my entire 47 years on Earth, I've seen minority people who run the entire spectrum, just like Whitey, from straight up trash to intellectual, brave, and caring. It's very easy to disprove the idea of an inferior race, both in the world at large and up close and personal, even as mentors. The only thing exceptional about these people is overcoming the cultural gravity that says these supreme qualities ain't black. Sadly, those words often come from the mouths of white people who temporarily need something from them, like votes. But it's much harder to shake off a stereotype. Who keeps the stereotypes alive, the media, the race pimps, the politicians? Could it be in this day and age where we watch more than one point of view on 3 TV channels, we have a divided America versus 40 years ago? Maybe it's because more of us realize a monolithic view of the world, including minorities, is total BS. So, those are my comments. Thank you for indulging me.
All right, thank you. City Manager report, Mr. Koppler, do you have anything?
Just had one quick thing. The Macomb County has sent out information regarding CARES Act money is going to be available to the municipalities in the county. We're in line for, I think, about $651,000, but it has to be for things that are approved through the CARES Act and then reimbursed. So we're working on a number of different ideas that would work, and we'd be able to get that money here in St. Clair Shores. So I'll be sending some information out shortly.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
could I say one thing?
yes.
It was suggested to me that I mentioned to council that, sort of on the lighter side, that a couple of weeks ago, the television program Jeopardy had a teachers tournament. And the teachers from all over the country competed, and the one that ended up winning the entire tournament was a teacher from St. Clair Shores. I think he teaches vocal music in a area high school, lives in St. Clair Shores, and so I watched it. St. Clair Shores was mentioned numerous times on national TV, and they thought that it may be an enjoyable thing to locate him and give him some kind of recognition from City Council.
Sure, we'll do that. Thanks, Bob. Item 13, audience participation, views and opinions expressed in our audience participation. Those of the individual citizens not only do not represent the views and opinions of the mayor, city council, administration, city of St. Clair Shores. You get a 5-minute time limit. Do we have anyone that would like to speak? Mary, do you have anyone that emailed you that this will be, I think, the last meeting we have that for email, but do you have anyone?
No, Mayor.
And no one here that wants to speak, so we'll move it back to mayor's comments. Just 2 quick items. The next meeting is not till July 20th, so this is July 20th, right? A number of years ago, we took, I guess, the 4th break, so we meet July 20th, so we have 5 weeks, so let's make sure we, Mr. Koppler, let all the contractors, everyone know that it'll be a little bit delayed in checks because we must approve them. But again, July 20th is the next meeting here in council chambers. And with that, we will not be here for the 4th of July. So enjoy the 4th of July. 244 years we have been a country. So enjoy your holiday, enjoy your family. With that, we'll need
to adjourn.
Moved by Mr. Frederick, supported by Mr. Karen to adjourn. All in favor? Aye. All opposed. Good night.